If you are serious about growing great bonsai trees, you need to understand some simple fundamentals about tree biology. Keep watching because I'm going to simplify and explain those processes that you need to know to get the best out of your bonsai trees in autumn and winter. Let's get started. Leaf colour changes. During the growing season, leaves are green because of a pigment called chlorophyll, which is essential for photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is a green pigment found in plant cells and is essential for photosynthesis, which is the process by which plants convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy in the form of glucose and other organic molecules. Chlorophyll breakdown. As the days get shorter and the temperatures drop in the fall, trees receive signals to prepare for winter. Reduced chlorophyll production. With less sunlight and cooler temperatures, trees slow down their production of chlorophyll. As a result, the green chlorophyll in the leaves begins to break down and is not as efficiently replaced, revealing other pigments. As the chlorophyll breaks down, other pigments in the leaves become more visible. Carotenoids, which produce yellow and orange colours, are present in the leaf throughout the year, but are often masked by the dominant green of chlorophyll. Anthocyanin production. Some trees also produce anthocyanin, a pigment responsible for red and purple hues in the leaves. This pigment is not always present, but is often produced in response to specific environmental conditions like cool nights. The presence of anthocyanin can be seen in the leaves of Deshoja and Katsura Japanese maples, which leaf out in early spring with vivid red leaves before the chlorophyll production gets into full swing. Over the summer months, the leaves change to a green hue, before resuming red coloration in autumn, before the leaves finally fall. Leaf senescence. The cells at the base of the leaf stem, the petiole, begin to weaken and are closed off by the tree, which eventually causes the leaf to detach from the tree. Eventually the leaves fall from the tree due to the weakened attachment and are carried away by the wind. The combination of reduced chlorophyll, presence of carotenoids and anthocyanins, and the eventual loss of leaves creates the vibrant colours of autumn foliage. Different tree species exhibit different colours, and the precise hues can vary depending on environmental factors, making fall a spectacular display of nature's beauty. Sometimes, even trees of the same species growing side by side can show different colours due to subtle genetic variation. Leaf senescence explained. Leaf senescence is the natural aging and deterioration of leaves in trees, and it serves several important purposes in the cycle of a tree. Resource reallocation. As the days grow shorter, the temperature drops in fall, and trees go through a process of resource reallocation. The nutrients and valuable molecules, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, are withdrawn from the leaves. These resources are moved back into the tree, primarily to be stored in the trunk and upper roots for use in future growth or for overwintering. Energy conservation. Leaves are highly active during the growing season, and their metabolic processes require a significant amount of energy. As days become shorter and sunlight decreases, it becomes less efficient for the tree to maintain these energy-expensive processes in the leaves. Leaves are delicate structures and prone to damage, so jettisoning them is a survival strategy. Protection from winter stress. Senescence helps protect the tree from the potential damage due to harsh winter conditions, such as frost and dehydration. By shedding leaves, the tree reduces the vulnerability to freezing temperatures and loss of water through transpiration. Leaf recycling. The process of leaf senescence also allows the recycling of valuable nutrients within the tree. When leaves fall to the ground and decompose, they release nutrients back into the soil, enriching it for future growth. The reabsorbed chemical compounds can also act as an effective antifreeze to protect the tree through winter. Reproduction. In some tree species, the leaf senescence is also linked to reproduction. Trees may drop leaves with seeds, cones, or fruit to facilitate the dispersal of their reproductive structures. In summary, leaf senescence is a highly regulated and essential part of the tree's life cycle. It involves the reabsorption of nutrients, energy conservation, protection from winter stress, and contributes to the overall health and sustainability of the tree and its ecosystem. Energy storage. The process of overwinter energy storage in trees is crucial for their survival during the cold winter months. It involves storing energy and nutrients that will sustain the tree until spring. Here's how the process works and how it's affected in autumn and spring. Autumn. As autumn approaches, trees undergo a process known as senescence, during which they withdraw the nutrients and valuable molecules, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, from their leaves. These resources are moved back into the tree's woody structures, including branches, trunks, and roots. Energy conservation. The energy-expensive processes in leaves, such as photosynthesis, are gradually reduced and eventually cease. This allows the tree to conserve energy as days become shorter and temperatures drop. Storage of reserves. The withdrawn nutrients are stored as reserves in various forms, including starches, sugars, and proteins. These reserves are stored in parenchyma cells within the tree's woody tissues. Leaf shedding. Trees shed their leaves as part of the senescence process. This not only conserves energy but also helps protect the tree from the potential damage of frost and dehydration during winter. Winter. Dormancy. In winter, when temperatures are low and light is limited, the tree enters a state of dormancy. Metabolic processes slow down significantly, further conserving energy. Utilizing reserves. During the dormant period, the tree relies on the stored reserves of its woody tissues to meet its minimal energy needs. These reserves provide necessary energy to support basic life processes and sustain the tree through the winter. Spring. Resumption of growth. As temperatures rise and daylight increases in the spring, trees exit their dormancy and resume active growth. They start to mobilize the stored reserves to fuel the production of new leaves and growth of branches and roots. Photosynthesis reinitiated. With the development of new leaves, photosynthesis is reinitiated, allowing the tree to generate energy through the conversion of sunlight into sugars. Replenishing reserves. During the growing season, leaves replenish the reserves that were utilized during the winter. They convert the newly produced sugars into starches, which are stored for future use. Overwinter energy storage in trees is a critical survival strategy, allowing them to endure the harsh conditions of winter and resume growth in the spring. It involves resource reallocation, energy conservation, and the use of stored reserves to sustain the tree through the dormancy and prepare for the active growing season in spring. If you'd like to see how I developed this beautiful little bonsai tree from an almost featureless stump, then keep watching, and more importantly, I'll show you how you can do the same. This tree is my hornbeam stumpy tree, and it was initially a tree which I found in the bargain section at the local garden centre, and I paid about £6 for it, and the tree at that point was 7 foot tall. I brought it home and I immediately reduced that down significantly to a stump of about 6 inches tall. I did that major trunk chop just below a bud. A good bonsai starts with a good trunk. The trunk is the framework on which everything else literally hangs. Nebari. My preferred way to develop Nebari is in a wide aerated basket. This develops shallow roots and provides aeration for healthy development. Branches and foliage. This comes with ramification and can be developed once the trunk has been developed to the right stage. Branches and ramification can be built or rebuilt in a short number of growing seasons. Ramification comes from judicious pruning and pinching out or pruning of the growing tips of the branches. That causes back budding and activates latent buds further along the branch to develop and form new branches. It causes a continual subdivision along the branches. Foliage pads. These are a final step in refinement. Once you've got the trunk and you've developed the branches, you can then worry about placement of the foliage. In winter, all the energy of a tree, all the stored sugars and starches, are held within the trunk and the upper portions of the roots, and in spring all that energy rushes back up the tree, out along the branches, and forces the buds to start opening and to produce leaves. By performing a severe cut or radical trunk chop in early spring, that forces the stored energy, when it rushes back up the tree, to start forming new branches and buds at the cut site. And that's exactly what I've done with the tree here. It was effectively a featureless stump, but that energy rushing up the tree caused it to put out new buds and new branches, and that is what has enabled me to develop the branching on the tree and to create the bonsai in training that you see in front of you now. Growing a bonsai tree in a shallow aerated basket encourages the development of shallow, lateral growing, radial roots, essential for creating a stable and aesthetically pleasing bonsai. The shallow container limits downward growth, forcing the tree to spread its roots horizontally, while the aeration prunes the roots naturally through air exposure, preventing root circling. This process promotes a healthier, finer root system that can easily adapt when the tree is transplanted into a shallow bonsai pot, ensuring optimal growth and a balanced appearance. The entire canopy of this tree has been rebuilt from almost nothing in 2 to 3 years. I did a diagonal cut on the trunk, which is just visible in here, which is healing up. There were a couple of little side shoots on the tree, which are now formed into major side branches, and all the rest of this foliage I've grown over the last perhaps 2.5 growing seasons since making that trunk chop. To me, it's a great example of the fact that once you've got your trunk developed, you can regrow the branches and the foliage over a couple of seasons. My aim was to develop a stumpy little tree with significant taper, copying the example of Harry Harrington in his Bonsai Inspirations book. And in May of 2021, the stump had put out new buds, which were developing nicely. It's now late September 2023, and you can see that the tree is fully in leaf and has got some quite long extended growth. I've left that to help push energy into the tree and develop the thickness of that trunk, and also try and promote that root growth that I'm after. These long extended shoots now have served their purpose. I need to reduce that back quite significantly, because what I don't want to do is I don't early next year want the tree to be putting energy and expending energy on these branches which aren't part of the final design anyway. So what I'm planning to do is go around the tree and shorten back all of this extended growth, and we'll be able to see better the profile of the tree then. And perhaps at that point it's time to think about wiring the tree. There's no great art or artistry to what I'm doing here. I'm just going around and I'm just pruning this long extending growth back so I can begin to see the structure of the tree better. I'm treating this exercise via directional pruning, so deciding which side of the growth I want to keep a bud. Hornbeams, like beech, grow with opposing leaves, and so if I were to cut at this point, I would get the branch to continue out in that direction, and if I was to cut below this point, I would get the branch to come out in that direction. So I'm just bearing that in mind as I go around the tree trimming. You can see as that we're approaching autumn. I'm now getting some dead and dry leaves on there. I'm not trying to be particularly scientific or precise about this at this stage. It's just really about ensuring the tree doesn't get out of control, and that in spring of next year it's not putting energy into growth and development that's not required in the final finished design. And we're going to get rid of this long extending growth up here and trim that quite hard back. So I've got a huge long shoot there that I've removed, and there's a couple more further down where I'm doing the same. And hornbeam will tolerate quite hard pruning. At this point I've got this long extending growth coming out here. I've also got another branch which is forming and running almost parallel underneath that, and what I can do is when I come to wire, I can just wire that out to the side, so I get more of a sort of V-shaped junction rather than two branches immediately underneath each other. I'm just going to trim that back a little. And also the branch above. So there you have it. I've been around the tree and I just trimmed back the growth on there just to try and keep the tree under control. My plan now is to minimally apply some wiring just to perhaps bring some of those branches down and also position a couple of those. But I'm thinking that it may be better to do that once the leaves have dropped and I can see the structure of the tree better. So here's the tree from above, having been pruned. I've cut back all that extending growth, and the tree will be left now into spring of next year. All of this branching has been developed subsequent to the major trunk chop, and you can see the trunk chop in there, and the cambium is rolling in on that and healing up quite nicely. And you can see we've got the beginnings of ramification branches and secondary branches on there, and I just need to refine that and position those going forward.
I've taken the opportunity to apply wire to my hornbeam stumpy tree.
This is the tree that I like to refer to as my hornbeam stumpy. It's a tree that was developed from a 7-foot hornbeam tree, which I cut down to about 8 inches in height, and I've been regrowing the branching on that ever since to give me a much shorter tree with some nice taper and branch development on that. During early winter, late autumn of last year, once the tree had lost leaves, I went through the process of wiring all of these branches in a more downward aspect to give the tree a better impression of age. I'm really quite happy with the way that this is looking and developing.
This tree you will have seen in a number of previous videos, and it's my hornbeam stumpy. And you can see that that's putting on quite a lot of dense foliage and growth. But there is this part at the top where it seems a little bit sparse. I put some wire on this in winter to shape the branches and bring those in a more downward aspect in the tree. But I do have this area here now which is a little bit empty, and so I think what I'm likely to do is, if I cut the tree just above where this foliage is here, what I'm hoping for is I'm going to increase some growth further back down the tree, because otherwise I've got this area which is a bit empty really. You see in there. What would you do with this tree? The shape is a little bit difficult to see at the moment because the foliage is so dense on there. You see we've got growth extending out there. This is all the new growth from this season. And what I've been doing is tending to just cut back. If I cut back the ends, the growing tips of these, that will encourage these buds further back to then spring out and helps with the ramification of the tree. All of the foliage and the branches on this tree have been developed over the period of perhaps about 3 years now. So 3 years ago this was just a featureless stump with no branches or foliage on it whatsoever, and what you see here now has been grown in that period of time. And what I'm aiming for is quite a short tree with quite a bit of nice taper developed in there. There are a number of different methods to growing and developing bonsai, whether it's growing them in a pot like this or developing them in the ground. But keep watching, because I'm going to give you not only the pros and cons of each method, but I'm going to show you some fairly dramatic differences between the two.
Bonsai cultivation is an art form that combines horticultural techniques and aesthetic design to create miniature trees that reflect the beauty of their larger counterparts. The development of bonsai can be achieved through various methods, two of which include growing the tree in a pot and growing it in the ground. Let's compare and contrast these methods, focusing on a case study of two crabapple trees of the same age that have been cultivated using these different techniques. We'll explore the advantages and challenges of each method and compare the results. Growing bonsai in a pot. Growing a bonsai in a pot from a young sapling involves meticulous care and attention to detail. Primary focus is on slow and steady growth, promoting ramification or branching, and developing a fine twiggy structure. Controlled environment. The pot provides a confined environment where factors such as soil composition, water and nutrients can be closely monitored and adjusted. This control allows for the precise management of the growth rates and encouragement of desirable traits such as small leaves and dense branching. Root pruning. Regular root pruning is essential in pot cultivation to prevent the tree from becoming root-bound and to promote a healthy radial root system. This process encourages the development of fine feeder roots, which are crucial for nutrient absorption and overall tree health. Branch development. In a pot, the growth of branches and twigs is carefully managed through techniques like pinching, pruning, and wiring. These methods help create a well-balanced and aesthetically pleasing structure, essential for bonsai. The main benefits of this approach will be less major cuts and severe wounds on the tree. Limitations. The primary limitation of growing bonsai in a pot is the restricted space, which can slow down the thickening of the trunk and the overall size development. In effect, once a tree is placed into a pot, its development will go into slow motion. As a result, achieving a mature-looking bonsai can take decades.
When you put a tree into a ceramic bonsai pot like this, everything that the tree needs for growth and development is suddenly confined and constrained to what's in the pot. That includes the soil, the water, the nutrients, and the physical space for growth. And that is why suddenly the tree's development has gone into slow motion. If your aim is to keep the tree small, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with growing that in a bonsai pot, because that environment will slow down its development and keep that tree on the smaller side. But on the other hand, if your aim is to grow that tree, then this is not the right environment for it.
Growing bonsai in the ground. Growing bonsai material in the ground offers a different set of benefits and challenges. This method is often used to accelerate the development of the tree's trunk and overall size before transitioning it into a bonsai pot. Rapid growth. Trees planted in the ground have access to a larger volume of soil, water, and nutrients, leading to faster growth rates. This rapid development is particularly beneficial for thickening the trunk and achieving a more mature appearance in a shorter time frame.
The trunk is, after all, the literal frame upon which the rest of the bonsai tree is developed.
And branching and canopy can often be developed or regrown over a relatively small number of growing seasons.
For a tree newly planted or transplanted into the ground, year 1 will be slow as the tree is in shock. In year 2, the roots will begin to develop as the tree gets established. And in years 3 and subsequent years, the tree will begin to put on significant growth. By comparison, for a tree grown in a pot, growth over the same period of time might be negligible. Whilst growth may not have stopped, consider it has been put into slow motion.
Root spread. The Nebari describes the root flare at the point where the tree is secured to the ground. It literally grounds the tree and gives it an appearance of maturity and stability. Planting over a buried concrete slab can help control the depth of the root system. It prevents roots escaping downwards, encouraging a shallow radial root spread. This technique is advantageous for bonsai, as it helps create a stable and visually appealing Nebari or root flare. It prepares the tree for a life in a shallow bonsai pot. Trunk development. The unrestricted growth in the ground allows for significant trunk thickening. Once the desired trunk thickness is achieved, a significant trunk chop can be performed to reduce the tree's height and promote new branch growth closer to the base, aiding in the construction of a compact bonsai form. Transition challenges. The primary challenge with ground growing is the eventual transition to a pot. Uplifting the tree and adapting it to the confined space of a bonsai pot requires careful planning and execution. The tree must be gradually acclimated to the reduced soil volume and regular root pruning must be performed to fit it into the bonsai pot. Comparison to examples.
This tree is a crabapple, and it's one of a number of trees that I got as cell-grown saplings from the Woodland Trust probably about 5 years ago now. This particular tree was initially grown in a nursery pot and then moved into this bonsai pot. And I put some wire on that to give it a bit of shape, and over time have developed the ramification of the branches on this tree. It's got some slightly unusual looking roots which need some work. This is an example of the coarse growth that you get with crab apples, and it's a bit of a feature of the tree really. But what I want you to particularly note is the thickness of the trunk, and it's maybe pencil thick. Bear in mind this tree has been in this pot now, or in a pot, for about 5 years, and the tree itself is probably about 6, maybe 7 years old. Now let me show you another tree from the same batch. This corner of the garden is my nursery growing bed, and I've actually buried some paving slabs under the soil here, probably about 5 to 6 inches below the level of the soil. Now this is where I plant trees to thicken up the trunks. In here I've got this crabapple, which was from exactly the same batch as the one that you've seen already. This tree has been in the ground for perhaps about 3 years now, this being the 3rd year. I have periodically chopped and trimmed the top of this tree, but it's currently about 5 foot tall. And all of these leaves are solar panels feeding energy back in and thickening up the base of the tree. And the plan is to do a severe trunk chop on this in a year or two. What I really wanted to emphasize to you is the thickness of the trunk. And the tree in the pot is about half the thickness of the tree which has been planted into the ground. This crabapple is one of the prizes in my collection, and you can see it's got a thick, gnarly trunk. Now this was almost certainly grown in the ground to develop that trunk thickness. That's not something you could achieve purely by growing this in a pot. Similarly, this is another thick trunked crabapple, and I know that this was grown in the ground for probably about 20 years before it was actually dug up and transplanted into this pot. So if your aim is to grow pencil thin bonsai trees, then putting saplings into pots is certainly the way to go. But those trees will take decades before they have any look or maturity about them, if they ever actually achieve that. A good bonsai starts with a good trunk. The trunk is the framework on which everything else literally hangs. Nebari. My preferred way to develop Nebari is in a wide aerated basket. This develops shallow roots and provides aeration for healthy development. Branches and foliage. This comes with ramification and can be developed once the trunk has been developed to the right stage. Branches and ramification can be built or rebuilt in a short number of growing seasons. Ramification comes from judicious pruning and pinching out or pruning of the growing tips of the branches. That causes back budding and activates latent buds further along the branch to develop and form new branches. It causes a continual subdivision along the branches. Foliage pads. These are a final step in refinement. Once you've got the trunk and you've developed the branches, you can then worry about placement of the foliage. So the vital lesson I want for you to take away from this video is this, that when you put a tree into a pot, you reduce the speed of development of that tree. And that's why you'll hear experienced bonsai growers and developers talk about only putting trees into a ceramic finished bonsai pot once that tree is already refined, because at that stage you're not putting on additional growth on the tree. You're maintaining it at that size and state of development, and you do that by constantly pruning and maintaining the roots, and you're keeping it in a constrained environment where you're controlling the watering and the nutrients and feed on that tree, and that helps maintain it in that particular state. And the mistake that many beginners make is that they'll put an immature tree into a pot far too soon, and the result is that that slows down the tree, and it could be decades before that tree makes for a refined bonsai. So if you want to thicken up your bonsai trees, then I would recommend planting them in the ground, or at the very least in a shallow aerated basket, to help develop those trunks and thicken them up, to give them a more mature look. If on the other hand you're more concerned about refinement and the tree, you're happy with the size of it but just need to develop branching and ramification, then by all means a ceramic bonsai pot is the right environment for it. So how to improve your bonsai? Pick good starter material. Don't waste time on weak and poor material that's unsuited to bonsai. It's good for learning the basics, but sooner or later you'll want to elevate your bonsai development. Start with the trunk. Get Yamadori or collected trees if you can. Grow your trees in baskets or in the ground to help thicken up the trunk. In year 1, the tree will be in shock and recovering after being transplanted. In year 2, it will be getting more established in its new environment and beginning to send out roots and fattening up. By year 3, the tree starts to run away and growth becomes more rapid. The longer you can leave it to grow in the ground, the better. Allow unrestrained growth and for leaves to develop, since leaves are like solar panels. More leaves means more energy, means more growth. You can cut back that foliage and reshape the tree once you have the trunk to the point that you need it. I'm a huge book nerd and love to read and absorb as much information on any subject that interests me, and that's why I've got such a large collection of bonsai themed books. But which 5 books would I recommend for anyone new to the hobby of bonsai? Keep watching and see my 5 recommendations. If you're interested in bonsai and want to get started as a beginner, there are a wealth of informative books available that can guide you through the basics and help you develop your skills. What qualifies a book for beginners or people new to bonsai? Well, to make this list, a bonsai book for beginners should typically have several of the following characteristics. Introduction to bonsai. It provides a clear and concise introduction to the art of bonsai, explaining its history, philosophy and basic principles. It helps beginners to understand the essence and purpose of bonsai. Basic techniques. It covers fundamental techniques essential for bonsai care and cultivation, such as pruning, wiring, shaping and repotting. The book should explain these techniques in a beginner-friendly manner with step-by-step instructions and illustrations. Tree selection.
It offers guidance on selecting suitable tree species for bonsai, taking into consideration factors like climate, available space, and the beginner's level of expertise. The book may include profiles of popular bonsai trees, highlighting their characteristics and care requirements. Care instructions. It provides detailed information on caring for bonsai, including watering, fertilizing, pest and disease management, and seasonal maintenance. The book should offer practical tips and guidance for beginners to keep their bonsai healthy and thriving. Styling and design. While a beginner's book may not delve into advanced styling techniques, it should at least introduce basic concepts of bonsai design, including trunk and branch placement, foliage pruning, and creating a harmonious overall appearance. Troubleshooting. It addresses common problems and challenges that beginners may encounter with their bonsai, along with practical solutions and troubleshooting tips. This section can help beginners identify and address issues to ensure the well-being of their trees. Inspiring examples. The book may showcase a variety of bonsai styles and examples, providing visual inspiration and demonstrating the potential artistic expressions that can be achieved with bonsai. A glossary and reference material. It includes a glossary of bonsai terms and relevant reference material such as lists of recommended tools, resources for further learning, and additional reading suggestions. A bonsai book for beginners then should be approachable, informative and easy to understand, providing a solid foundation of knowledge and practical guidance to help beginners begin their bonsai journey with confidence. Here then are my top 5 recommendations for bonsai books for beginners. This is almost certainly the slimmest and most inexpensive book on my list, but it's a great little visual compendium of bonsai. It weighs in at only 72 pages, but it's got some great illustrations in there. It covers all the basics in a sort of whistle-stop fashion. And for anybody who's interested in just touching on the basics of bonsai, it covers everything fairly quickly and in a superficial way in there. Being a Dorling Kindersley book, it's very visual in its presentation and appearance. The next suggestion on my list is a bit more wordy. Bonsai Basics, a comprehensive guide to care and cultivation by Colin Lewis. This book provides a solid introduction to bonsai, covering topics such as choosing suitable tree species, shaping and pruning techniques, watering and fertilizing, and overall care and maintenance. This Bonsai Basics by Colin Lewis is another great book that was suggested and recommended by a couple of people when I canvassed them for suggestions, and it's the book that I gave away as part of my 1,000 subscriber giveaway. And it's a nice little book, and you can see it covers all the basics. So what is bonsai, buying a bonsai, how a tree works, light and water, the details of keeping a tree in a pot, how to look after it, and a bit of a tree directory at the end. It's a bit more wordy and got some more in-depth text content than the previous book, but it covers all the basics quite nicely and is a great little introduction to the subject. And to me, this is definitely a worthy item adding to the list. The Bonsai Bible, the definitive guide to choosing and growing bonsai by Peter Chan. This small but comprehensive guide covers all aspects of bonsai care, including choosing appropriate species, styling, wiring, shaping, and advanced techniques like grafting. It also provides practical advice on caring for bonsai indoors and outdoors. Peter Chan might be considered something of a Marmite character in the bonsai community, but I've got a lot of love and respect for the guy. He's someone whose videos introduced me to the subject of bonsai, and he's responsible for publishing a number of books on the subject. And I've chosen this one, the Bonsai Beginner's Bible, as a book for my list of 5 recommendations for beginners. And you can see, although it's quite a diminutive book, it has quite some substance, and there are over 300 pages there. It's the usual thing, it covers all the history of bonsai,
what a bonsai tree is, selecting material, and how to care for your trees, all the usual wiring, repotting, environmental factors, and then there's quite a substantial catalogue of different species of trees, indoor and outdoor, and their correct bonsai care. And for the price, I think this is a nice little book. Before I continue and show you my possibly controversial top 2 picks, I just need for you to hit the like button, to share the love, and possibly consider subscribing to be notified of future videos. Now let's get to those top 2 recommendations.
The Complete Book of Bonsai, A Practical Guide to Its Art and Cultivation by Harry Tomlinson. Considered classic in the field, this book offers a comprehensive overview of bonsai artistry and horticulture. It covers everything from history and styles to practical techniques and care instructions.
This book is very popular and highly regarded amongst the bonsai community, and it's easy to see why. It's a large format book and it's very visual in its presentation. It's got some fantastic illustrations in here and covers all the basics. And it's got a number of worked examples in there as well as covering all the usuals of wiring, tree selection, propagation. It's also got a compendium of trees and shrubs at the end, which gives you a bit of detail about which trees are best suited for bonsai and a little bit of information about their cultivation and care. Now, I believe this book has been printed a number of times, and so you'll likely find it with a different cover to this one. I don't think it's currently in print, but it is available on Amazon and on eBay, and also I believe that you can get hold of copies of this book from Greenwood Bonsai. This book was a very popular choice when I canvassed other people for their suggestions for the #1 book for beginners, and I'm sure a lot of people will be shocked and surprised. So let's see which book I chose as my #1 pick. The book that I've selected as my #1 spot, Bonsai by Dorling Kindersley. Publishers Dorling Kindersley seem to have taken all the best spots on my list, and for good reason. They produce very visual, educational and reference books, and the book that I've selected as my #1 spot, Bonsai by Dorling Kindersley, it's a great example. And it covers everything that you would expect in a beginner book, from bonsai basics to selecting particular trees. It's got a number of nice worked examples that go step by step, which is what I particularly like about this book and why I recommend it as my #1 pick. It's got a lot of similarities to the Harry Tomlinson book in that it's a very visual Dorling Kindersley book. It has that sort of visual layout, great reference material. But for me, what won it out was the nice worked examples. It's a fairly inexpensive book. It's available on Amazon for about £15–16, and I think it's an absolute bargain and a must-have for anybody who's new to the hobby and looking to develop their skills a little further. The book ends with a nice plant care directory, giving quite a lot of detail about the care of each individual species of tree, from watering, fertilisation, plant placement, and details of any pests or diseases that those trees might suffer. Definitely a worthy item to add to your collection.
All of these books cover the basics and are relatively inexpensive and accessible for anyone new to the hobby. They should provide you with a solid foundation in bonsai and help you get started on your bonsai journey. Remember that practice and patience are key when it comes to bonsai, as it's an art form that requires ongoing care and dedication.
So what did you make of my list, and which books would you include on there? Please leave a comment below and let us know what you think. There are a number of insect pests and invasive weed species that can threaten the health and well-being of your bonsai trees. Keep watching, and not only will I help you identify what those are, but I'll also show you what you can do to minimise the damage that they can do to your bonsai trees.
Scale insects are small sap-sucking pests that attach themselves to plants, including bonsai trees. They can cause significant damage by weakening the tree, leading to yellowing leaves, stunted growth, and in severe cases branch dieback or death of the plant. They notably excrete a waxy protective substance beneath their domed shells. To eliminate scale insects, it's essential to manually remove them using a soft brush or cloth. Apply a horticultural oil or insecticidal soap to suffocate the pests, and ensure good overall tree health to prevent infestations. Regular monitoring and timely intervention are crucial for managing these pests effectively. Liverwort. Liverworts are small, non-vascular plants that thrive in moist, shaded environments and often found growing on the soil surface of bonsai trees. They have a simple structure consisting of a flattened leaf-like body called a thallus. In bonsai cultivation, liverworts are considered a nuisance because they compete with bonsai for nutrients and water, especially in the confined space of a bonsai pot. Their presence can indicate overwatering or poor drainage conditions that are detrimental to bonsai health. The significance of liverwort in bonsai cultivation lies in its impact on the growing environment. If left unchecked, liverworts can form a dense mat over the soil surface, inhibiting water penetration and air circulation to the bonsai's roots. Therefore, managing liverwort involves improving soil drainage, reducing moisture levels, and physical removal of the plant. Pearlwort. Pearlwort, or Sagina procumbens, is a low-growing perennial plant that resembles moss and thrives in moist, compact soil conditions. It produces small white flowers and has a dense, mat-forming growth habit. In bonsai cultivation, pearlwort is problematic because it competes with bonsai trees for nutrients, water, and light. Its rapid growth can quickly cover the soil surface, leading to significant competition for resources. These seemingly innocuous weeds have quite far-reaching roots that compete with your trees for nutrients. The presence of pearlwort in bonsai pots is particularly troublesome because it can inhibit proper water and air penetration to the bonsai's roots, which can create conditions for root rot and other moisture-related problems. Additionally, its dense growth can be aesthetically unappealing and challenging to remove once it's established itself in the pot. Effective management involves regular monitoring, maintaining proper watering practices, and manually removing the weeds to ensure the bonsai health is not compromised. Woolly aphids are small insects with a white, woolly coating, found on various plants like fruit trees. They become most active in warmer months. These aphids feed on plant sap and secrete honeydew, which can lead to sooty mould, causing leaf curl, yellowing, and stunted growth. Control methods include natural predators like ladybugs and lacewings, and where necessary, chemical treatments, like insecticidal soaps and oils. Effective management combines natural methods with careful chemical use in severe cases.
Aphids are small, sap-sucking insects that infest bonsai trees, feeding on their foliage and tender stems. They pose a problem for bonsai cultivation by weakening the tree, causing distorted growth and excreting honeydew, which can lead to sooty mould growth. This not only affects the tree's health but also its appearance, making effective aphid management crucial for maintaining bonsai vitality. To combat aphid infestations on bonsai trees, regularly inspect the plants and use a strong water spray to dislodge them. Introduce natural predators like ladybugs, or use insecticidal soaps and neem oil for chemical control to help prevent aphid infestations. Surfactant sprays will suffocate them and their eggs. Vine weevils. Vine weevils pose a significant threat to bonsai trees due to their destructive feeding habits. While adult weevils feed on the plant leaves, creating noticeable notches along the edges, it's the larvae that cause the most harm. Living in the soil, the larvae feed on plant roots, leading to a severe reduction in nutrients and water uptake. For bonsai trees which have compact and delicate root systems, this root damage can be devastating, resulting in wilting and potentially killing the tree. To protect bonsai from vine weevils, it's crucial to monitor for signs of adult feeding damage on leaves and to inspect the soil for larvae, especially if the tree shows signs of poor health. I would particularly advise checking the soil of any plant that's been newly bought from a garden centre or a nursery. Effective management includes using biological control like nematodes, chemical treatments specifically targeting vine weevils, and replacing infested soil. Regular vigilance and appropriate treatment measures are essential to ensure the health and longevity of bonsai trees. This is by no means a comprehensive roundup of all the pests that you might face with your trees. There are others such as spider mites and caterpillars which I'm not currently suffering with my own trees. If you'd like a more comprehensive description of all the pests and diseases that your trees might face, I can highly recommend this book. Pinus parviflora, commonly known as Japanese white pine, is a small to medium-sized evergreen tree native to Japan. It's favoured for bonsai cultivation due to its elegant appearance, compact growth habit, and graceful needles that create a sense of age and maturity in a bonsai composition. Pinus parviflora, or Japanese white pine, is a coniferous tree native to Japan, where it thrives in mountainous regions. It typically grows in acidic, well-draining soil and is often found in mixed forests alongside other conifers like Japanese red pine and Japanese black pine. The tree has a graceful pyramidal shape when young, with branches that spread horizontally as it matures. Its needles are slender and dark green, often appearing in clusters of 5, and they can vary in length from 3 to 7 centimeters, that's 1.2 to 2.8 inches. There are several notable varieties of Japanese white pine, each with its own unique characteristics. Some popular cultivars include Glauca. This variety features bluish-green needles, giving it a distinctive coloration that adds visual interest to bonsai compositions. Aokamatsu. Known for its vibrant green needles, Aokamatsu is prized for its lush foliage and compact growth habit. Zusho. This dwarf variety is highly sought after for bonsai due to its small size and dense, compact foliage, making it ideal for creating miniature landscapes. In Japanese culture, the white pine symbolises longevity, strength, and resilience, making it a meaningful choice for bonsai artists.
I'm not an expert with pines by any means, but we can often learn a lot about how to care for our trees by looking at their natural growing environments. This is particularly important with pines. White pines are a high altitude tree that grows in the harsh conditions on the mountains in arid soil where rainwater immediately drains away. Red pines are medium altitude trees, grow thickly in lush foothills and forests of Japan. Black pines are coastal trees that live at low altitudes and endure storms and typhoons. This is what often strips them of their first flush of needles, and why they've adapted to developing a second flush. What all this means is that Japanese white pines don't like to get their feet wet or sit in overly damp soil. The problem with white pine. In the UK, this can be a particular problem for our white pine bonsai trees. Due to the often damp, temperate climate with heavy rains through winter and into spring. I tend to keep my white pines under shelter over the winter months. I'm not concerned about cold temperatures because as high altitude mountain trees, they're hardy and used to harsh conditions. I water them only sporadically through winter and bring them back out once we are into spring. However, this year we had a particularly wet spring with weeks and weeks of rain, and as a result this expensive white pine started showing browning of the needles. Despite my efforts to mitigate the effects of too much rain, this tree continued to brown off, and within about a month had lost all signs of green. Losing any tree that you nurtured and looked after is a sad loss, and more so if it was an expensive addition to your collection like this one. It's an inevitable part of the bonsai journey. The important thing is to learn from your losses and to avoid repeating them. Fortunately, my other white pines didn't suffer the same way and continued to look healthy. I conclude that this had a lot to do with the compacted soil and water not draining through the pot, retaining too much water and keeping the roots wet. We can help avoid issues of wet roots with a good, free-draining soil mix, and some people cover their pots with collars or covers to divert the rain through the wetter months. Others, like myself, move them under shelter. So be careful with your white pines and be aware that they hate to get their feet wet. Be sure your soil is free draining and water is not pooling and sitting in your pots. What's your experience been with white pines and what tips would you offer? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.
I bought this Shishigashira Japanese maple from my local garden centre with the express intention of using it to create air layers. Keep watching and I'll show you how to create air layers with your trees, and also when is the best time to start those air layers for maximum success.
Shishigashira Japanese maple, also known as Acer palmatum Shishigashira, is prized for its unique foliage and compact upright growth habit. Its leaves are tightly packed and curled, resembling the mane of a lion, which gives it its name Shishigashira, meaning lion's head in Japanese. The foliage ranges from deep green to burgundy in colour, with stunning autumn hues of orange and red. Its compact form makes it ideal for small gardens or bonsai cultivation. Overall, its distinct foliage and compact growth habit make it a sought-after choice for bonsai enthusiasts.
I bought this large Shishigashira Japanese maple from my local garden centre with the intention of using it as a source for air layers.
Air layering is a propagation technique used in bonsai and horticulture to encourage the growth of roots on a tree branch or a trunk whilst it's still attached to the parent plant. The purpose is to create a new independent tree at that point with its own root system allowing for easy cloning of desirable varieties. It's a way of turning one tree into many. When to start an air layer? The best time to start an air layer is typically in the spring, when the first leaves have hardened off and are now supplying energy back down into the tree. This allows for optimal root development before the end of the growing season, reducing the risk of frost damage to new roots. How air layering works. Air layering exploits the tree's natural ability to produce roots along its trunk when conditions are favourable. In air layering, the cambium layer plays a crucial role in the process of root formation. The cambium is a thin green layer of actively dividing cells located just beneath the bark of a tree. When a ring of bark is removed during air layering, the cambium layer is also disrupted. The cambium cells, deprived of their usual flow of nutrients and hormones, undergo a series of physiological changes. These changes include an increase in cell division and the differentiation of cells into root primordia, which eventually develop into new roots. Meanwhile, the upper portion of the stem continues to receive nutrients and water from the parent plant, allowing it to remain healthy until it can be separated and planted as a new independent tree. Think of it as a two-way process. The water and nutrients the tree needs are flowing up the tree, and the energy and hormones generated by the leaves are flowing down. When we interrupt the downward flow by removing the cambium, the accumulated energy at the cut site promotes the emergency growth of new roots. Once these have developed sufficiently, the air layer can be separated from the parent tree and become an independent tree in its own right. The air layering process. Taking an air layer from a mature tree involves several steps to ensure successful root formation. Here's a detailed guide. Selecting the branch. Choose a healthy mature branch with a diameter of about 1 to 2 inches.
First job is selecting which branches you want to air layer. And on this particular tree, I'm going to air layer the majority of these branches and get maybe even as many as 10 different air layers from this one tree.
The branch should be flexible enough to wrap with rooting medium, but sturdy enough to support new growth.
You want to select branches which have a thickness at least as thick as your little finger. Otherwise, anything less than that's not really worth your while air layering.
Prepare the branch. We need to ring bark the tree, making 2 clean parallel cuts through the bark and cambium layer using a sharp knife. These cuts should only be a short distance apart and completely encircle the branch. These cuts will serve as the starting point for the air layer.
You want to ensure that there is foliage above the point at which you're going to air layer. The reason for that is that foliage is going to provide energy to the site where your roots are going to develop. In this case here, I'm going to start an air layer at this point, and the foliage just above that is going to provide energy down that stem to feed and generate roots at this point. You want to completely ring bark the stem at this point. So what you want to do is you want to go all the way around and create 2 cuts, perhaps about 1 inch apart. And you want that cut to go all the way through the bark and the cambium layer. Obviously not all the way through the wood.
Removing the bark. Carefully remove the bark and cambium layer from the branch between the 2 cuts. Using a sharp knife or a grafting tool, peel away the bark and cambium layer to expose the underlying wood, creating a ring of bare wood around the branch.
And you want to try and do this as cleanly as you possibly can. You'll probably find it's easier once you've taken a little bit of the bark off then to go around and then just peel off the remainder. Because I'm looking to create several air layers, I'm also going to create cuts in other areas around the tree. So I've now ring barked this tree in about 8 different locations, so I'm potentially going to get 8 trees off of there. I now need to get some medium on there to root those into and cover those in a plastic bag.
Applying rooting hormone. Applying a rooting hormone to the exposed wood can help stimulate root growth. Roots will form at the base of the upper cut, so apply the rooting hormone here. Dip a small brush or cotton swab into rooting hormone powder and apply it evenly to the exposed area. Wrapping with rooting medium. Prepare a rooting medium such as sphagnum moss. Moisten the rooting medium to make it slightly damp but not soggy. Wrap the exposed wood with the moistening root medium, covering it completely. Use plastic wrap or aluminium foil to hold the rooting medium in place and seal it around the branch. I found that a black plastic bag helps as it draws heat and helps warm the developing roots. Be sure to use enough rooting medium to allow for significant root development.
This next bit is the bit that's a little bit tricky, and you might wish that you had either a helper or 5 hands, and that's to maneuver and secure a bag onto the tree where you want to develop your roots. I'm just trying to secure the bottom edge of my bag with a little bit of a tie down, and I'm securing that just below the point that I've ring barked the tree, and this is just to hold the bag in place so that I can then get the rooting medium in there. I then want to fill that up and be as generous as you possibly can. There's no point putting only a tiny little amount of moss in there. You want to give the tree sufficient to root into. I always think perhaps something about the size of a tennis ball is probably a good size. And then I'm going to try and tightly wrap my bag around there, and then secure the top edge with another wire. In my experience, I found that a black plastic bag, because it draws the heat and holds the heat, is beneficial to you developing roots on there. I now just need to repeat that process all the way around the tree.
Securing the wrap. Secure the wrapping material tightly around the branch. Make sure the wrapping is snug, but not too tight to avoid cutting off circulation to the branch. I should perhaps just mention that not all species of tree respond equally well to air layering. And whilst I've had success with deciduous trees and things like hawthorns and maples, pine trees in particular don't respond well to air layers. So here we go. I've now got, I think, 8 air layers on there, which potentially will give me 8 new trees from this. And now I just need to leave this in a warm spot where it will catch some sun, which will warm up those air layers and help promote the roots.
and I need to check those in perhaps about 3 months' time and see how they're getting on. You may have heard that good ramification is a desirable characteristic to have in your bonsai trees, but perhaps you don't understand what that is. If that's you, then keep watching, because I'm going to explain to you exactly what ramification is, the effect that has on your bonsai trees, and I'm going to demonstrate to you exactly how to achieve great ramification and improve your bonsai trees. So let's get started. In nature, trees naturally divide and subdivide from the central trunk through the main branches and on out to the very tips of each branch, with secondary and tertiary branching. It's part of what makes for the image of an aged, mature tree. Ramification in the context of bonsai refers to the fine branching structure of a tree, where the branches divide and subdivide, creating an increasingly dense network of twigs and foliage. This results in a tree that looks mature and full, even though it's miniaturized. In bonsai, the goal is to mimic the appearance of a mature tree in a much smaller form. To achieve this, bonsai developers often work on refining the branches by encouraging the growth of secondary and tertiary branches and beyond. This creates a more intricate and detailed silhouette, enhancing the aesthetic appeal of the bonsai tree. Subdivision of branches involves the progressive splitting and bifurcation of larger branches into smaller ones. By doing this, the bonsai artist can create a more natural and aged appearance, as well as improve the overall balance and design of the tree. Trimming back to 2 buds on new growth and shoots is a technique used to encourage branching and compact growth. By limiting the number of buds, the tree focuses its energy on fewer shoots, resulting in stronger growth and better ramification. This also helps in reducing the distance between nodes, or internodes, leading to shorter spaces between branches and a denser canopy. Our aim with bonsai is to create the image of a mature tree in miniature. The most effective way to do this is to keep the internode distances small and to increase the density of branching in the smallest volume possible. The most efficient way to do this is to cut all new growth back to the first 2 new buds. This will help increase the branching from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 8, and so on, in the shortest possible distance, resulting in a dense canopy in the smallest space possible. Naturally, as branches grow, they will reach out for light and try to escape the shadow of other branches above them. This will mean that branches will grow long, with internodes getting increasingly longer. Leaving these to develop will result in a leggy, unruly looking tree, not what we want at all with bonsai. Instead, by trimming and controlling the growth back to the first couple of buds on any new growth, we keep our trees compact and miniature, whilst increasing the density of branches. Some trees like hornbeam and beech develop staggered leaves that emerge on opposite sides of the branch. These trees respond well to clip and grow technique and directional pruning. By pruning just above a bud, you can select the direction of future growth in the branches. The practice I'm about to show you here is particularly effective on trees that have opposing buds, such as Japanese maples, where the buds and new leaves emerge in pairs on opposite sides of branches and new growth. This is a practice you can carry out throughout the year, but in winter you can see the structure of the tree more clearly, and you can see where the buds are emerging on the extremities and new growth. By pruning now, you prevent the tree pushing and wasting resources into unwanted growth when the tree begins to flush out in spring. If we look at this Japanese maple here, we can see that the ends of the branches have got multiple buds on there, and the growth habit of a Japanese maple is that those buds will form on opposite sides of the branch. And if we were to cut this upper portion of that branch off, what would happen is we would end up with the branch forking at that point, and that's exactly what we want to do. At this point in here, I have a couple of buds at that point, A long internode before we then come to another second pair of buds and a terminal bud on the end of the branch. And if I just cut back to that point, then the branch will subdivide at that point in the coming growing season, and hopefully the internodes between the buds on those two emerging branches will be much shorter too. And I'm just simply going around the tree and performing that same operation throughout. And this isn't a substitute for your structural pruning. This is simply trying to get the tree to subdivide. So if you have branches that are crossing, branches that are dead, branches growing straight back in towards the centre of the tree, all those kind of faults, then you would still continue to remove and prune those out of the tree. One thing to bear in mind is you might get dieback. So what you would do is you just need to cut slightly above the node, and then the branch will likely die back to the node. If you cut too close to the node itself and you get dieback, then it might die back all the way to the node, and it means that effectively you lose all of this really. So just give yourself a little bit of room, and this little bit will die back then to where the buds are. By performing this operation all the way around your tree, what you're hopefully going to get is an increase in ramification in the tree and much shorter internodes. If I show you this Japanese maple garden tree, here's an example of a branch that has just been left to grow, and what we've got is we've got quite long internodes, and you'll see that it hasn't branched off, and it will continue to grow out seeking the light. And what we want to do is we want to cut that right back. Particularly in bonsai, we want the most compact tree we can get. So by cutting at that point, that forces those two buds to then separate out and form new branches, and we get a more compact growth habit. This tree is a Japanese maple aureum, and because it's got quite large buds, despite the fact it's a garden tree, it should be useful to demonstrate the principles. And you can see, for example, here we've got a branch which has got a number of internodes, and it's got buds all along there. What would happen is if we let that grow, that'll just keep growing out. What we want is to keep this tree as compact as possible. And so what we would do is simply find the first couple of buds and cut just a little way above there to allow for dieback. And it's simply a matter of going around the tree and selecting the first two buds on each branch and each new growth.
By promoting ramification and carefully managing the growth of branches, bonsai enthusiasts can create trees that are not only aesthetically pleasing, but also exhibit the mature characteristics of their full-size counterparts in nature, but in a much smaller form.
Few subjects in bonsai cause as much argument, disagreement and controversy as bonsai soil, and few topics cause as much anxiety and confusion for people new to the hobby. But bonsai soil doesn't have to be difficult if you understand some simple horticultural principles and the basic needs of your trees. Here then is my take on bonsai soil and what you need to know to grow healthy, successful bonsai trees.
Essential properties. To promote healthy growth of bonsai trees, the horticultural properties of the soil or substrate your trees grow in is crucial. The essential properties of bonsai soil are as follows: good drainage, aeration, moisture retention, and nutrient retention. Good drainage. Bonsai soil must have excellent drainage to prevent waterlogged roots, which can lead to root rot. Well-draining soil ensures that the excess water can escape, allowing the roots to breathe. When watered, any excess should drain out of the pot, meaning it should be almost impossible to overwater your trees. Aeration. Proper aeration is essential to provide oxygen to the roots of your trees. Aeration prevents the soil from becoming compacted, which can hinder root growth and nutrient absorption. A granular soil mix will allow greater aeration as the air inhabits the spaces between the soil particles. Roots require oxygen for respiration. Moisture retention. While drainage is vital, bonsai soil should also retain enough moisture to keep the roots hydrated between waterings. Certain types of soil particle will hold on to water molecules. This balance between water retention and free draining is critical for maintaining healthy and well-hydrated trees. Nutrient retention. Bonsai soil should be able to hold and release nutrients gradually. While the primary source of nutrients for bonsai comes from regular fertilisation, the soil should aid in nutrient absorption. Organic soils will hold and release nutrients, but also bring problems of soil breakdown, pests and pathogens harmful to your trees. In truth, any substrate meeting the roots' needs of drainage, moisture, aeration and essential elements will be the ideal substrate and your trees will grow. In addition to these essential properties, there are also other considerations to bear in mind. pH balance. The pH of the soil should be within an appropriate range for the specific tree species being grown. Some trees and shrubs like azalea prefer slightly acidic soil, while others thrive in neutral or slightly alkaline conditions. Particle size. Bonsai soil typically consists of a mix of different sized particles. These may include larger particles like gravel or clay for stability, and smaller particles like sand, pumice or perlite for aeration and drainage. The exact particle size varies depending on the tree's needs and your local climate. Too small and the soil will become compacted and the tree will be starved of essential oxygen. Consistency and stability. Ideally, the soil should maintain its structure and not break down too quickly. It should resist compaction over time, ensuring a stable environment for the roots. Sterility. Bonsai soil should be free from pathogens, pests and additives that can harm your tree. This is particularly important for the health of the bonsai. Frequent repotting. Bonsai trees require periodic repotting to refresh the soil, trim roots and maintain the health of the tree. The soil should be conducive to this practice. The ideal bonsai soil mix varies depending on the specific tree species, your climate and local conditions. Bonsai enthusiasts often create custom soil mixes by blending various components such as Akadama, pumice, lava rock, perlite, composted pine bark, and more to achieve the right balance of these essential horticultural properties. Regular monitoring and adjustment of the soil mix are crucial to the support and healthy growth and development of bonsai trees. Tree growing conditions. Trees have the remarkable ability to adapt and tolerate growth in a range of soil types due to their diverse root systems and metabolic processes. This adaptability is why there is no one single optimum bonsai soil mix for all types of trees in all local environments and climates. Here's why. Different tree species have evolved with varying root structures to access and absorb nutrients and water. Some have shallow fibrous roots, while others develop deep tap roots. This means that the ideal soil mix must match the tree's natural root behaviour. Local soil composition can vary significantly from one region to another. Trees naturally adapt to the soil in their native habitats, which may be sandy, clayey, loamy or rocky. Bonsai enthusiasts need to replicate these conditions as closely as possible. Local climate and weather patterns greatly influence a tree's water and nutrient requirements. In arid climates, trees may need soil with higher water retention, while in the wetter regions, well-draining soil becomes essential to prevent root rot. Different tree species have specific preferences for pH levels, nutrient concentrations and moisture levels in their growing medium. Bonsai soil must be customised to cater for these specific needs. Even within the same local environment, microclimates can vary. Some parts of a garden or yard may receive more or less sunlight, wind or rainfall. This can impact the soil's drying and moisture retention rates. The growth stage of the bonsai, whether it's in the initial development phase, refinement phase or mature stage, can also influence the ideal soil mix. Young trees may require a more moisture retentive mix, while mature bonsai might need better aeration and drainage. The goals of the bonsai grower can also influence the choice of soil mix. Some growers aim for rapid growth, while others focus on refinement. Different soil compositions can support these different objectives. Given these variables, bonsai enthusiasts often create custom soil mixers by blending various components like Akadama, pumice, lava rock, perlite, and organic matter such as composted pine bark. They adjust the proportions based on the specific needs of the tree species, the local environment, and the desired growth outcome. In summary, trees' adaptability to different soil types and their responsiveness to local conditions and climates makes it essential to tailor bonsai soil mixers for each tree. The art and science of bonsai cultivation involves understanding the specific requirements of the tree species and creating a growing medium that mimics its natural environment, fostering healthy growth and longevity. Why we don't use garden soil. You might be wondering why, if a garden tree can be grown in garden soil, then why can't we do the same with bonsai trees? Well, the answer is this. It's the pot. Garden soil is primarily made up of organic particles, which by their very nature are continually breaking down and compacting, continually reducing the spaces between the molecules. In an open environment, water can drain away and run off, but in a confined container such as a bonsai pot, this is not the case. Unlike in the ground, excess water cannot run off in all directions, and a container filled with garden soil has little air because of the side walls. When garden soil is put in a bonsai pot and the tree is watered, the roots can't breathe. Commercial bonsai soil mixers. Much of the so-called bonsai soil sold in garden centres, such as this, is low quality rubbish. No better than regular garden compost for growing bonsai and will hold too much moisture without providing good aeration. If you are going to buy a pre-mixed bonsai soil, you should do so from a reputable bonsai nursery. Several well-regarded nurseries sell popular general-purpose bonsai soil mixers and are available online, such as Ibuki in Poland or Kaizen in the UK. In truth, your trees are responding to what is not included in the bag, the air and the water. Many bonsai enthusiasts will opt to make their own bonsai soil mixers. Organic or inorganic? Organic bonsai soil mixers contain components derived from living or once living materials. These typically include elements like composted pine bark, coconut coir, or peat moss. Here are some key points about organic soil mixers. The pros. Organic materials release nutrients gradually as they decompose, providing a steady source of nutrition for the bonsai. Organic matter has good water holding capacity, ensuring consistent moisture for the roots. Organic soil support beneficial microorganisms that can aid in nutrient cycling and root health. Some tree species with higher moisture and nutrient requirements, like certain deciduous trees, benefit from organic mixers. The cons. Organic material breaks down over time, leading to compaction, acidity, and a reduction in aeration in the pot. More frequent repotting is required to refresh and replace decomposed organic matter. Lastly, organic mixers can sometimes encourage weed growth or unwanted pests. Inorganic bonsai soil mixers consist of non-living components like Akadama, pumice, lava rock and perlite. Here are some key points about inorganic soil mixers. The pros. Inorganic materials ensure proper drainage and aeration, preventing root rot and promoting strong root development. These mixers break down slowly, reducing the need for frequent repotting. Growers have greater control over the soil's characteristics, making it easier to fine-tune the mix to specific needs of the tree species and local conditions. Inorganic mixers are versatile and can be used for a wide range of tree species. The cons. Inorganic mixers do not provide nutrients, so fertilisation is crucial. They have a lower water holding capacity, which may require more frequent watering, especially in dry climates. Trees transitioning from organic to inorganic mixers may need time to adapt. The choice between organic and inorganic bonsai soil mixers often depends on factors like the tree species, the local climate, and the specific goals of the grower. Many experienced bonsai enthusiasts opt for a combination of both types, creating a hybrid mix that combines the benefits of each. For instance, a mix that includes Akadama, pumice, and composted pine bark can provide a balance between water retention, aeration, and nutrient release. Ultimately, the right bonsai soil mix should align with the needs of the bonsai tree and the preference of the grower. Soil-borne pests. A bonsai soil mix with a higher proportion of organic components like pine bark or compost can make it more attractive to insect pests like vine weevils. Organic materials provide a food source and a suitable environment for these pests to thrive. To reduce the risk of pest infestations, it's generally recommended to use a well-draining, inorganic soil mix, or a mix with a lower percentage of organic matter. This can create an environment that is less hospitable to soil-based insect pests and help maintain the health of your bonsai trees. Soil components and properties. Horticultural growing mediums play a crucial role in the cultivation of bonsai trees. Each of the materials has its own unique chemical and physical properties, with specific advantages and disadvantages for bonsai cultivation. You should concern yourself more with the properties of the soil or soil components you're using, rather than the actual product itself. It's often possible to substitute components for something similar, if you understand their properties and what they bring to your soil mix. The key is to cover the essential basics of free draining, water retention, good aeration and nutrient holding. Here's a detailed breakdown for some popular and commonly used soil components and what they bring to a bonsai soil mix. Molar clay. Molar clay is a lightweight, porous clay material, typically neutral in pH, which is suitable for most plant types. Molar clay has excellent drainage properties and retains some moisture. It's good for moisture regulation, lightweight and provides stability to the bonsai tree. As a high-fired clay, it does not break down over time, like some other substrates. Akadama. Akadama is a type of volcanic clay that is slightly acidic. It has good water retention while maintaining aeration due to its granular structure. It's excellent for root development, pH suitable for many bonsai. It does, however, break down over time, necessitating regular repotting. Pumice. Pumice is a lightweight volcanic rock, neutral in pH. It offers good drainage and aeration due to its porous nature. Pumice promotes healthy root growth, prevents compaction and is lightweight. It lacks water retention properties, so it's often mixed with other substrates. Lava. Lava is another volcanic rock, typically neutral in pH. It has excellent drainage, but poor water retention properties, and helps with aeration, resists compaction and is long-lasting. Lava has low water retention, so should be used in blends with other materials. Perlite. Perlite is a lightweight, pH-neutral volcanic glass. It has good aeration, but doesn't retain water well. Perlite is lightweight and improves drainage, and is particularly good for seedlings. It lacks water retention and nutrients. Zeolite. Zeolite is a naturally occurring mineral composed of aluminosilicates. It has a porous structure that can trap and release various substances, including water. Zeolite is often used in agriculture and gardening to improve soil quality and water retention. It can enhance nutrient availability to plants and help reduce nutrient leaching. However, it's essential to follow recommended application rates, as excessive use of zeolite can lead to nutrient imbalances in the soil. Agricultural grit or sand. Agricultural grit or sand is typically neutral pH. It improves drainage and aeration but lacks water retention. It can provide stability and prevent compaction. It should be used in combination with other materials. Composted pine bark. Composted pine bark is slightly acidic due to decomposition. It retains moisture well and offers aeration. Pine bark adds organic matter and improves water retention. It decomposes over time and may become acidic. General purpose compost. pH can vary depending on composition. It offers good moisture retention and some aeration. Being organic, it's nutrient rich. It can be used as a base in mixers. Since the organic particles decompose and break down over time, it will compact and may have pH fluctuations. Akadama and Kiryu are both popular in traditional Japanese bonsai culture for their water-retaining qualities. Molar clay offers similar properties. Pumice is great for aeration and stability, but requires other materials for moisture retention. Lava, perlite and agricultural sand and grit are often used to improve drainage, but need to be combined with substrates that retain moisture. Composted pine bark and general-purpose compost add organic matter and nutrients, but can become acidic over time and compact. The choice of growing mediums for bonsai depends on the specific needs of the tree species, local climate and growers' preferences. Often a mix of these materials is used to balance moisture retention, aeration and stability, ensuring optimal conditions for bonsai growth. Cat litter controversy. I've seen some disturbing posts and online comments regarding the use of cat litter and wanted to clear up some details and misunderstandings. When experienced bonsai growers talk about using cat litter, they are specifically talking about using molar clay, which is a high-fired clay which is terracotta in colour. It's used in Kitty Friend Pink cat litter and was used in Sunny Cat Pink and Tesco Lure Dust non-clumping cat litter. It's also used in some safety oil spill absorbent materials. Molar clay has been used in both bonsai and cactus cultivation for decades. If it's not molar clay, do not use it for your valuable bonsai trees. You cannot just use any cat litter product. When you hear cat litter, substitute the words molar clay. Other cat litter products will either break down to sludge when wet, or contain harmful ingredients that will kill your bonsai trees. Akadama versus molar clay comparison. Akadama and molar clay are two commonly used components in bonsai soil mixers, and although they offer some similar properties, they have some differences in their properties and composition, both at a macroscopic and molecular level. Origin and composition. Akadama is a type of volcanic, clay-like soil component that originates from Japan. It's primarily composed of granules of clay and mica. The clay component in Akadama provides water retention properties, while the mica component contributes to its porous structure. Akadama is native to Japan, and therefore has to be exported for bonsai use elsewhere, which can make it relatively expensive. It's an oversimplification, but you can think of Akadama as having hollow tubular structures running through its particles. Molar clay, also known as diatomaceous earth, is a type of clay-rich sedimentary rock that is formed from fossilized remains of diatoms, which are microscopic single-celled algae. It's baked at high temperatures and contains a high percentage of silica and smectite clay, along with various minerals and trace elements. Molar clay is mined exclusively by Imeris from the 3 islands off the northwestern coast of Denmark, on the islands of Fur, Mors and Nordsaling. Due to its makeup, you can think of molar clay as having hollow pockets or dimples in its surface. Water retention and drainage. Akadama has good water retention properties, meaning it can hold moisture for the roots of the bonsai trees. However, it also provides good drainage, allowing excess water to flow away. The porous nature of Akadama particles creates air pockets in the soil, promoting root respiration. Water is held in the hollow tubular structures of Akadama. Molar clay has lower water retention properties compared to Akadama. It tends to drain water more readily. Water is held in the hollows of the clay particles. Durability and breakdown. Akadama is known to break down over time due to its clay composition. As it breaks down, it can become compacted, reducing its effectiveness in terms of water retention and drainage. Therefore, regular repotting and soil renewal are recommended to maintain the quality of the soil mix. The action of water freezing and thawing can cause the soil particles to fracture and break down over time, becoming increasingly smaller. However, as roots grow in the soil, they grow through the tubular structures, and as they increase in size also cause the soil to fracture. In doing so, this also causes damage to the fine roots, causing them to subdivide and become increasingly fine, which is a desired behaviour for bonsai trees growing in shallow pots. Molar clay is generally more durable and resistant to breakdown compared to Akadama. Its mineral composition contributes to its stability over time, making it less prone to compaction and degradation. Unlike Akadama, the soil particles do not crack and fracture as water in the soil freezes and thaws. However, as water freezes and expands, it can cause a phenomena where the soil appears to rise up out of the pot. It's important to note that while Akadama has been traditionally favoured in bonsai cultivation, its availability and use may vary depending on region. Molar clay and other alternative components are sometimes used as substitutes or in combination with Akadama to achieve specific soil characteristics desired for certain tree species or growing conditions. Ultimately, the choice of soil component should consider the specific needs of the bonsai tree and be based on experimentation, observation, and local availability. Special considerations. Some plants, like azalea, prefer a more acidic, ericaceous soil such as Canuma. You need to be aware of the species-specific requirements of your trees and make sure your soil caters for that. APL, a popular mix. The Akadama pumice and lava APL mix is a popular bonsai soil mixture used in cultivation, and it combines 3 distinct components to create an optimal environment for bonsai trees. Here's a breakdown of each component and why this mixture is popular. Akadama. Akadama is a type of volcanic clay typically sourced from Japan. It's been used for bonsai for generations. It has excellent water retention, which helps to keep the roots hydrated between waterings. It can also provide aeration due to its granular structure. It is favoured for its ability to support root development, maintain consistent moisture levels, and provide a stable foundation for bonsai trees. Lava. Lava rock is another volcanic material commonly used in bonsai soils. It has exceptional drainage properties and is highly resistant to compaction. Its porous nature promotes aeration around the roots. Lava rock is included in the mix to prevent waterlogging and maintain a well-ventilated root system. It contributes to the structural stability of the soil. Pumice. Pumice is a lightweight volcanic rock with porous texture. It's neutral in pH and offers superior drainage and aeration. It's lightweight, preventing the soil from becoming too heavy. Pumice ensures that the soil mixture is well draining and aerated, preventing compaction and allowing the roots to access oxygen. Why the APL mix is popular. The Akadama pumice and lava mix is popular in bonsai cultivation for several reasons. It offers balanced properties. This mix combines the strengths of each component, providing a balance of moisture retention, drainage and aeration. Bonsai growers often fine-tune the blend to best suit the needs of their trees, but the APL mix serves as a versatile and time-tested foundation for bonsai cultivation. The truth, in summary. There's no one single perfect bonsai soil mix. The key is to provide good drainage, water retention, aeration and nutrient provision. Understand the properties of each component in your soil and what they bring to the mix. Any soil component can be substituted with something with similar properties. When experienced bonsai growers talk about cat litter, what they specifically mean is molar clay. You cannot just use any cat litter product. A mix of Akadama, pumice and lava is considered a good general all-purpose soil mix. And because APL is a wholly inorganic soil mixture, I would recommend mixing something like biochar into your soil to help promote beneficial bacteria, which will be good for the roots of your trees and help with nutrient retention and absorption. In the last week of April, I started a number of air layers on this large Shishigashira Japanese maple. It's now the middle of July and 10 weeks have passed, and it's time to take a look at these to see how we're getting on. Keep watching to see if we've had any success. I bought this Shishigashira Japanese maple from my local garden centre with the express intention of using it to create air layers. So I started about 8 air layers on this tree. Sadly, 2 of those died off and dried out above where the air layer was, and so I've lost those. However, you can see these ones that are remaining, and so I'm going to take these bags off to reveal the moss underneath and to see whether or not they've rooted into that moss. Just before we get started and I show you whether we've had any success or not, I'd like to just recap what air layering is about. Air layering is a propagation technique used in bonsai and horticulture to encourage the growth of roots on a tree branch or a trunk whilst it's still attached to the parent plant. The purpose is to create a new independent tree at that point with its own root system, allowing for easy cloning of desirable varieties. It's a way of turning one tree into many. How air layering works. Air layering exploits the tree's natural ability to produce roots along its trunk when conditions are favourable. In air layering, the cambium layer plays a crucial role in the process of root formation. The cambium is a thin green layer of actively dividing cells located just beneath the bark of a tree. When a ring of bark is removed during air layering, the cambium layer is also disrupted. The cambium cells, deprived of their usual flow of nutrients and hormones, undergo a series of physiological changes. These changes include an increase in cell division and the differentiation of cells into root primordia, which eventually develop into new roots. Meanwhile, the upper portion of the stem continues to receive nutrients and water from the parent plant, allowing it to remain healthy until it can be separated and planted as a new independent tree. Think of it as a two-way process. The water and nutrients the tree needs are flowing up the tree, and the energy and hormones generated by the leaves are flowing down. When we interrupt the downward flow by removing the cambium, the accumulated energy at the cut site promotes the emergency growth of new roots. Once these have developed sufficiently, the air layer can be separated from the parent tree and become an independent tree in its own right.
So I've already been through the process of selecting the trunks that I want, of ring barking those, putting some rooting hormone on, and then covering them in some kind of rooting medium, i.e. moss, and bagging those up. It's now time to take a look and see how that's getting on. So here we go with the first bag. I've secured these with a bit of wire, so I'm just removing the wire. And there's a black bag holding that moss in place. Now what we're hoping for is lots of roots on here, so that this upper portion can be separated from the main tree and can be grown as an independent tree. So just being very careful not to disturb that too much. What we don't want to do is to damage any roots which started growing on here. So here we go. Here's the reveal, and I can see on here we have got a nice set of roots growing on there. So this is the very first of the air layers, and you can see clearly we've had some success there, and there's a mass of new white roots. So I think I can safely separate this part from the tree. But this is just one part of many. Let's have a look at the other air layers. Here's the second one, and I'm just loosening the wire so I can get into the bag and take a look. And here's the moment of truth. And again, you can see we appear to have masses of root on the base here. So I think we can separate this portion of the tree again to grow as an independent plant. So based on the success we've had elsewhere, I'm hoping that we're going to find lots of nice roots in here too. And I can see roots there. Lots of lovely white roots. Now these are very delicate, and I have to be careful not to knock those off and damage them. But that looks like another success. Let's just cover that up briefly whilst I look at this other one next to it. This is possibly the smallest of the bags of moss that are on here. And here we go, moment of truth. And I can already see there are some roots in here. And there's a mass of roots. And this is possibly one of the most successful air layering exercises that I've undertaken. And I'm really quite pleased. So there is just one more around the back here, and I lost part of the top of the tree here. I do still have leaves just above the air layer site, so there's no reason why that can't be a viable tree. So let's get into this final bag and take a look. And here we go, moment of truth. And I'm not seeing any roots on this one. Perhaps because, there are some roots just round the back. But I think perhaps because there is less foliage up above to drive the energy down, then perhaps there aren't as many roots in here, but there are definitely roots emerging at the back there. So, given that we've got roots on all of these moss balls now, what I need to do is delicately remove each of these plants just below the root ball, and then get those planted up into baskets. The plan now then is to remove them and get them into these pond baskets with some bonsai soil to aerate and help develop the roots. I now need to delicately remove each of these just below the root ball, obviously trying to avoid causing any damage to the new roots. So that's one. It's worth mentioning that even once I've taken all of these off, what I've got left is this thick trunk, which I can then develop into a nice tree, although it has got a visible graft here. And this is the last one. And there we go. I'm just going to add a bit of wire to these baskets to try and keep the trees stabilised whilst the roots are developing. Because they're quite fine and delicate at the moment, there is the danger that they could be damaged if the trees move about in the pots too much. I'm just adding bonsai soil into the bottom here, and it's just a nice free draining mix that will encourage the roots to grow and develop. And then I just want to try and steady the tree in the pot give those roots an opportunity to develop. Now they're a little bit delicate, so I don't want to be trying to rake them out too much at this stage, because there's the danger I'll just shear them straight off, which will obviously be no good for the tree. So let's just hold the tree steady, and I'm just going to top the pot up with bonsai soil. And this is just any free draining bonsai soil mix. The key is lots of good drainage, lots of good aeration, and that will help those roots to develop further. And that tree will just get popped on one side to develop for the next several months. The plan is to give a couple of these away to other bonsai YouTubers. And the fact is I lost a couple, so that's a couple less that I have to give away, which is a shame. But my plan is still to give these away. So this was the one with the least amount of root on it. Now there is still some root on there, and reduce the foliage on there to give that every chance of surviving, and we'll see how that gets on. It's possible this one might not make it. So I'm just using these wires to just gently support the tree in the middle of this basket. And that's really just to hold that steady whilst those roots get settled and develop. And that now just needs to go into a corner where it won't get disturbed. So that tree is not going to rock about too much in the basket, which is going to give the roots every opportunity to develop and get established in the basket. And we're now down to our final tree. So I'm really quite pleased with how that's gone. We've got 5 successful air layers that have come off that parent tree. Plus we've obviously got the parent tree still for future development. The plan now is to just leave these in a quiet corner of the garden, let those roots progress and develop. And then at some point I will be giving these away. Well, I'd consider that a success. What do you think?
Bonsai, the ancient Japanese art of growing miniature trees, holds a deep significance in Japanese culture. It's an embodiment of the principles of harmony, balance, and tranquility. Within the realm of bonsai, the concept ma and the masterful use of negative space plays pivotal roles. Ma refers to the interplay between objects and the space surrounding them. This video explores the significance of ma and the artful utilization of negative space in bonsai, shedding light on how these concepts contribute to the creation of stunning, evocative displays. In Japanese aesthetics, ma is the concept rooted in the appreciation of space, void, and silence. It represents a pause, a moment of calm, and the space between objects or events. The Japanese term for negative space, kukan, encapsulates this idea perfectly. In bonsai, ma becomes an essential element, as it emphasizes the relationship between the tree and its environment. It's through this careful consideration of this space that the beauty of bonsai truly flourishes. Negative space, or empty space, is a fundamental aspect of bonsai design. It's the area surrounding and within the bonsai composition that breathes life into the display. Negative space not only provides visual relief, but also creates a sense of balance and proportion. In bonsai, the presence of negative space is as crucial as the tree itself. It allows the viewer to appreciate the form, shape, and texture of the tree, whilst also evoking a sense of serenity and tranquility. Bonsai as an art form embraces minimalism and understatement. It's through this masterful use of negative space that the minimalist aesthetic of bonsai finds its voice. By deliberately leaving empty spaces, the artist invites the viewer to fill in the gaps with their imagination, allowing for a more profound emotional connection. The absence of excessive foliage or overcrowded elements directs the focus to the tree's essence, promoting a sense of harmony and simplicity, creating dynamic balance. Negative space plays a vital role in achieving dynamic balance within a bonsai composition. Balance in bonsai is not merely about symmetry. It's the delicate equilibrium between the elements present. By skillfully utilizing the native space, a bonsai artist can create an interplay between the tree's solid mass and the surrounding emptiness, achieving a harmonious visual dialogue. the judicious placement of branches, the angle of the trunk and the careful selection of containers all contribute to this delicate balance. Bonsai seeks to capture the essence of nature in miniature form. The use of negative space in bonsai aligns with Japanese aesthetics of less is more. By allowing space to breathe around the bonsai, the artist mimics the vastness and serenity of nature. The empty space becomes a metaphorical representation of the expansiveness of the natural world, evoking a sense of tranquility and contemplation. In the art of bonsai, the concept of ma and the skillful utilisation of negative space have a profound impact on the overall aesthetic and emotional experience. Through ma, bonsai artists embrace the importance of space, silence and emptiness. The use of negative space in bonsai creates a dynamic balance, promotes minimalism and evokes a sense of tranquility. By appreciating the art of bonsai, one learns to appreciate the beauty in simplicity and finds solace in the harmony between nature and human creation. A common question for people new to bonsai is how to grow bonsai trees from seed kits like this. Keep watching to learn the secrets of growing bonsai trees from seed kits and see my recommendations, which might save you a lot of time and effort in growing your own bonsai trees. For many people, their introduction to bonsai will be through a seed kit like this. This is a shame, as it's not a great way to get started with bonsai. First, there's no such thing as bonsai seeds, only tree seeds which might be grown and in time cultivated to become bonsai. There's nothing special about the seeds. They're not dwarf varieties, and if planted in the ground would result in normal full-sized trees. Second, growing any trees from seed is a very long, time-consuming process, which for many inexperienced growers will result in disappointment and disillusion. If the seeds are viable, and they germinate, and they grow, they could well take 5 to 10 years to become suitable for starting to shape and cultivate for bonsai. You would be better off to get a 5-year head start and buy a simple nursery plant to style. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not worthwhile growing and cultivating trees from seeds. It absolutely is. There's a Greek proverb that says that a society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit. But understand, it will take years, and you will be better to do this alongside having other trees to work on. My honest advice, go buy yourself a nice, inexpensive little Chinese elm from a nursery or garden centre. And forget the bonsai seed kits. Sadly, there isn't a lot I can do in the bonsai garden at this time of year, but what I can do is offer you my top 10 pick of intermediate level bonsai books. To make this list, I consider an intermediate level book to be one that covers bonsai techniques in a little bit more detail, focuses on a specific species or technique, or offers high quality, inspiring images of bonsai trees. Also, books only make this list if I've been able to actually get hold of a copy myself and I've read that book. I wouldn't want to recommend to you books which I haven't been able to read. So for example, that means John Knacker's Bonsai Techniques Volumes 1 and 2, which sell for silly money on eBay, even for copies that are falling to bits. So let's have a look and see what my recommendations are. My number 10 pick is this, Literati Style Penjing by Master Zhao Qingquang. It's a beautiful hardcover book which covers literati bonsai trees and their development in quite some detail. And it's full of these really amazing pictures and examples of really classic literati bonsai.
The book is actually one in a series of books by the same author, and I recommend all of them, in all honesty. As the titles might suggest, this is bonsai from a Chinese perspective, and beautifully done. As someone who loves the Shohin bonsai trees in particular, this next book, Bonsai Shohin Passion by Roland Schatzer, is a great little addition to anybody's library. It's full of lots of really wonderful images of the smaller bonsai trees, and what's particularly great about this book is that each example talks you through the development of the tree over a number of years, and so is great in setting expectations and giving you an idea of what kind of thing is achievable and in what kind of time frame. And you can see here the images really are quite wonderful, and to me this is what bonsai is all about: beautiful tiny trees. This book, Satsuki Bonsai by Janine Drost, is a book that makes the list based on the fact that it looks at a specific species of tree in quite a lot of detail. And in this case, obviously, it's focused on care and cultivation of Satsuki or Satsuki Azalea bonsai. And there are lots of wonderful images and details about different varieties and variants of tree. Images of all the different flower variants and combinations, and then it goes into a lot of detail about specific care needs for those trees, how to prune them and develop them, what their needs are in terms of things like watering. And then there is a gallery of some stunning imagery of Satsuki or Satsuki Azalea bonsai trees. And if that's your thing, if you're interested in flowering bonsai, then this really is a great resource for you, which I heartily recommend. This book, Deadwood Design: Special Techniques for Bonsai, is by European-based Argentinian Andre Bicoca. It's got some absolutely beautiful imagery in here, and the book details what tools to use, various techniques for carving deadwood and creating deadwood features on your bonsai trees, and turning those into not just features but really beautiful works of art. The pictures really are something. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. This book, Bonsai Today Master Series Pines, is another book that made the list because it covers the cultivation and development of pine bonsai trees in great detail. A lot of the content of the book, I believe, is made up of articles which featured in Bonsai Today magazine, and they've all been pulled together in this one place to form a really detailed reference on development and cultivation of pine trees, whether that's white pines, red pines, black pines, and some of the European pine trees. It covers those in great detail, explaining various techniques that can be used to refine them. And obviously, as you can see here, it's got lots of really wonderful images of refined trees. If you're someone who's interested in developing pine trees and developing those to a high level, then this really is the resource for you. Another great book in the same series is this, the Bonsai Today Master Series Junipers book, which does exactly the same thing, but this time for junipers. So again, if junipers are your thing and you want to know the best techniques for developing those to a high level of refinement, then this really is another great book for you. Again, it's pulled together from articles and information which was in Bonsai Today magazine and supplemented with additional information on the care and cultivation of all species or variants of juniper. I'm not aware of another resource which is as detailed as this on the subject of juniper development, and you can see it includes some amazing examples of bonsai trees and some great photographs. Peter Adams was a prominent figure in the bonsai community who originally came from England, and although he sadly passed away a number of years ago, he left behind a number of great books on bonsai, and my favourite is this one, Bonsai with Japanese Maples. It's a great book with lots of worked examples of Japanese maples and how to develop those through to becoming bonsai. It covers some basic bonsai techniques in quite a lot of detail, and there's some great diagrams in here. And then the latter part of the book is talking through a number of project trees and how those were developed over a number of years. It's certainly a book which I've learned a lot from, and although it was published a number of years back now, and some of the details in there, particularly about things like bonsai soil, may be a little bit outdated, in terms of the general principles, it's really a great book, and if you're interested in developing Japanese maples, I definitely suggest that you search out a copy of this book. Bonsai Heresy. It's a great read from American bonsai artist Michael Hagedorn, who's a Japanese trained bonsai artist. What's great about this particular book is it takes a number of established bonsai practices or thoughts and dismantles them. Based on observation and study, Michael takes a number of strongly held beliefs and looks at those in great detail. And the book might be considered a little bit controversial to some, perhaps, but I believe this is a book that should be on every serious bonsai enthusiast shelf, and I would suggest that you probably need to read it at least once a year. It really is a great read. This book, Modern Bonsai Practice, by Larry Morton and featuring images by Walter Paul, is another book which I think really deserves to be on any serious bonsai enthusiast's shelves. It looks at a number of areas of practice and development with bonsai in quite a lot of almost academic detail. In fact, Larry Morton is an academic, I believe, and he's looked at various peer-reviewed studies and analysed those as they pertain to bonsai and various bonsai practices. It sounds perhaps like a little bit of a dry book, but in fact it's full of nuggets of information, and he will take a particular aspect of bonsai and he will analyse that in quite some detail and looking at whether or not that is in fact true. And the book covers, for example, pruning, practices regarding fertilisers, what the tree actually needs, the aspects of bonsai soil, and there are over 500 different sort of questions or points that the book covers. And that's the first half of the book, which is really valuable and full of lots of information that some people might also find quite controversial or may possibly disagree with, but it's all information which is backed up by academic study and scientific research, which is what makes it such an interesting read. The back half of the book then is filled with all these amazing images of the trees of German bonsai artist Walter Paul, who's famed for his more naturalistic approach to bonsai tree development. This book's not an inexpensive book, it's quite a pricey book, but if you're serious about bonsai, it's certainly worth having this on your shelves, and it's a reference book which I dip into from time to time. So here then is my number one pick, and it's really a series of books which I found to be game changers, and it's the Bonsai Inspirations series by Harry Harrington, the British bonsai artist. What I found particularly useful and what makes these books is the fact that in addition to explaining and setting out various bonsai techniques in quite some detail, it takes a number of trees through from raw material and explains over a number of years how those trees were developed and the techniques that were used on those. It's another book that over time sets your expectations in terms of what is realistically achievable, what techniques to use to achieve that, and the timeframes over which that can be realistically achieved. To me, as I say, this is a real game changer of a book, and I really can't recommend this book highly enough. Obviously, in addition to the great articles and details of how to develop the trees, are some fantastic pictures of those trees in a highly developed state. Hello and welcome to the Bonsai Garden. You know, growing great bonsai requires careful attention and specific techniques in order to achieve great success. Here are 10 secrets to help you on your bonsai journey. Selecting the right species. Choose a species that is suitable for bonsai cultivation, such as juniper, pine, maple or ficus. Consider the climate and growing conditions in your area to ensure the species will thrive. Some species of tree have naturally tiny leaves, such as Chinese elm or Cotonia ester, and so lend themselves more readily to being developed as bonsai, whereas other trees have huge leaves and are much less suited. Even amongst popular species like Japanese maples, some have much larger leaves and are much more difficult to reduce over time. Know your subjects and pick wisely. Understanding watering needs. Water your bonsai appropriately, as overwatering or underwatering can harm the tree. Learn the specific watering requirements of your bonsai species and monitor the moisture levels regularly. Proper soil mix. Use a well-draining bonsai soil mix to prevent waterlogging. The soil should retain enough moisture for the roots whilst allowing excess water to drain away. Avoid regular garden soil, as it tends to compact and suffocate the roots. Correct pruning and trimming. Prune and trim your bonsai regularly to maintain its desired shape and encourage new growth. Learn the appropriate techniques for your bonsai species, such as pinching, pruning and wiring, and apply them with care. Adequate sunlight. Provide the right amount of sunlight for your bonsai species. Most bonsai trees require a balance of direct sunlight and shade throughout the day.
Experiment with different locations to find the optimal spot for your tree. Before I continue, I just need for you to hit the like button to show your appreciation. And if you're interested in learning more about how I grow my bonsai, then subscribe to be notified of future videos. Thanks. Fertilisation. Fertilise your bonsai to provide essential nutrients for healthy growth. Use a balanced bonsai fertiliser and follow the recommended application rates. Adjust the fertilisation schedule based on the specific needs of your tree and the season. Repotting. Repot your bonsai periodically to ensure proper root development and prevent the tree from becoming root bound. Repotting allows you to refresh the soil, trim the roots and promote new growth. Follow the appropriate repotting guidelines for your bonsai species. Winter care. Protect your bonsai during winter by providing insulation from extreme cold or frost. Some species may require winter dormancy, whilst others may need to be kept indoors or in a protected area. Research the specific winter care requirements for your bonsai tree. Patience and long-term vision. Bonsai cultivation is a long-term endeavour that requires patience and a vision for the future. Understand that bonsai trees develop slowly over time, and achieving the desired look may take years or even decades. Enjoy the process and appreciate the beauty of each stage. Continuous learning. Bonsai is an art form that requires continuous learning and refinement of skill. Attend workshops, join bonsai clubs, read books, and seek guidance from experienced bonsai enthusiasts. Embrace the learning journey and always strive to improve your bonsai techniques. Successful bonsai cultivation requires a combination of knowledge, techniques and dedication. Each bonsai tree is unique, so it's essential to adapt each of these secrets to the specific needs of your tree species and growing conditions. I hope you found that useful or interesting. If so, then please hit the like button and consider subscribing to be notified of future videos. The tree is one that I bought from the Doncaster show in February of this year, 2023. And I was attracted to it because it's quite a substantial lump, quite a thick trunk oak tree for something that's quite small.
There's a whole host of great bonsai books for anybody who's interested in getting into the hobby of bonsai, and they provide a superb resource for learning. But keep watching to see why I am no longer buying bonsai books. Reading seems to be increasingly out of favour in this fast-moving digital age, despite being one of the greatest inventions in human history that allows knowledge to be passed from one generation to another without them having to reinvent the wheel. Today our attention spans seem to be much shorter, and people prefer a quick video rather than the structure, organisation and indexing of information that comes from books. I've always been an avid reader and can easily get through 100 to 150 books a year. Any subject that I'm interested in, I feel the need to absorb and immerse myself in as much knowledge as possible. And this is the case with bonsai. And though it's also a hands-on, practical hobby where experience counts greatly, we can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from their successes and failures. Not to do so would be foolish. For bonsai, that means knowing not only about development techniques, species of trees, but peripheral topics such as design, deadwood carving, propagation techniques, and even Japanese philosophy and artistic principles. I have already created videos recommending both beginner bonsai books, which introduce the hobby and give a great organised overview of the basic techniques and terminology. Similarly, intermediate level books that look in more detail at stylistic design issues, care and maintenance, and species-specific information. But I am now no longer buying bonsai books. At a certain point in the bonsai journey, this information in the beginner books becomes repetitive and simplistic, and only so much can be said about techniques like wood carving and developing deadwood, or air layering and fertilising bonsai trees. So now I'm more focused on the details of how plants and trees work. I've not stopped buying and reading books, but my focus has changed. To detailed horticulture, biology and botany, understanding the scientific and biological principles that underlie our bonsai practice and where they intersect with art, that inform what activities we perform on our trees and at what time of year. Tree biology doesn't have to be complex and confusing, and it's my aim to share and simplify the critical elements, to distill out the knowledge that helps us to work on our trees and to refine them and keep them healthy. Because once we understand some of the basics, our bonsai horticulture and development can thrive, and our bonsai trees with it. So join me on this continuing journey, and I'll try not only to inform you in what to do with your trees, but to share an in-depth understanding of both why and when. Fertiliser is an essential element of bonsai cultivation. It provides the necessary nutrients for the tree to grow healthy and strong, and it is important to understand how to fertilise properly to avoid damaging the tree. In this video, we will explore the basics of bonsai fertilisation. What is fertiliser? Fertiliser is a substance that provides essential nutrients to plants. These nutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, as well as other micronutrients like calcium, magnesium and iron. Fertiliser is typically applied to the soil where it's absorbed by the roots of the plant. Why is fertiliser important for bonsai? Bonsai trees are grown in containers, which limits their access to nutrients in the soil. This means that the bonsai trees are more dependent on fertiliser for their growth and health than trees grown in the ground. Without proper fertilisation, bonsai trees may become weak and susceptible to diseases and pests. Types of fertiliser. There are many types of fertilisers available on the market, and it's important to choose the right one for your bonsai tree. Some common types of fertiliser include organic fertilisers. Organic fertilisers are made from natural materials like bone meal, fish meal and blood meal. They are slow release fertilisers, which means that they release nutrients slowly over time. Inorganic fertilisers. Inorganic fertilisers are synthetic fertilisers that are made from chemicals. They're typically faster acting than organic fertilisers. Liquid fertilisers. Liquid fertilisers are mixed with water and applied to the soil. They're fast acting and easy to use. How to apply fertiliser. When applying fertiliser to a bonsai tree, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully. Over-fertilisation can be harmful to the tree and can even kill it. Some general guidelines for fertilisation of bonsai trees include: fertilise during the growing season. Bonsai trees should be fertilised during the growing season, which typically runs from spring to fall. Use a balanced fertiliser. Bonsai trees require a balance of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, as well as micronutrients. Use the correct amount. The amount of fertiliser to use will depend on the type of fertiliser and the size of the bonsai tree. It's important to measure the fertiliser carefully to avoid over-fertilisation. Water the tree after fertilising. After applying the fertiliser, it's important to water the tree thoroughly to ensure that the nutrients are distributed evenly throughout the soil. Many commercial bonsai fertilisers, such as this one, will have an NPK ratio somewhere on the packaging. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, which are the three primary nutrients required by plants for healthy growth. Nitrogen, or N, is essential for the growth of leaves and stems, as it's a major component of chlorophyll, the molecule that plants use to convert sunlight into energy. Phosphorus, or P, is important for root growth and flower development, as it's involved in energy transfer within the plant. Potassium, or K, is necessary for overall plant health and stress tolerance, as it regulates water balance, strengthens cell walls and helps plants to resist diseases and pests. Fertilisers that contain these three nutrients in various proportions are known as NPK fertilisers. The ratio of NPK in a fertiliser is typically listed on the packaging, such as 10-10-10 or 5-10-5, indicating the percentage of each nutrient in the product. For example, a 10-10-10 fertiliser would contain 10% nitrogen, 10% phosphorus and 10% potassium. Different plants have different nutrient requirements, so it's important to choose a fertiliser with the appropriate NPK ratio for the specific type of plant being grown. With bonsai, favour lower ratios. Do not be tempted to apply stronger solutions, which will result in chemical burn to the roots and be detrimental to the plant's health. Organic and inorganic fertilisers. What's the difference? It's simply carbon. Organic fertilisers include the carbon molecule. They'll be created from plant or animal materials or waste. However, synthetic molecules and inorganic molecules are exactly the same. There's no benefit to the plant from organic or inorganic fertilisers. Plants don't care whether their chemicals come from natural organic or synthetic inorganic fertilisers. When applying liquid fertiliser, remember that any nutrients will be quickly leached out of the bottom of the pot through watering. This is why many bonsai enthusiasts favour cakes or granular feeds placed into the pot that will slowly release their goodness over time with repeated watering. Fast-acting soluble fertiliser products will be short-lived and must be applied more often. Liquid seaweed can be a beneficial addition to the care routine of a bonsai tree. Here are some potential benefits and guidelines for applying it. Nutrient boost. Seaweed is rich in minerals and micronutrients that can help promote healthy growth in plants, including bonsai trees. Applying liquid seaweed can supplement the nutrients already present in the soil, leading to stronger, healthier plants. Stress relief. Bonsai trees are sensitive to changes in their environment and can become stressed when conditions are not ideal. Liquid seaweed can help alleviate this stress by providing the tree with additional nutrients and promoting root growth. Pest and disease resistance. Seaweed contains compounds that can help improve a plant's resistance to pests and diseases, which is especially important for bonsai trees. They're often grown in indoor environments where pests can easily spread. When applying liquid seaweed to a bonsai tree, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions and not overly apply. Generally, a small amount of seaweed extract mixed with water is sufficient. You can use a spray bottle to mist the leaves and roots of the tree, or water the soil directly with a seaweed solution. It's best to apply seaweed extract early in the morning or in the evening, when temperatures are cooler and the sun is less intense. Applying liquid seaweed can be a beneficial addition to the care routine of a bonsai tree, as it can provide nutrients, alleviate stress and improve pest and disease resistance. Normally, continuous release feed products such as cakes and pellets can be applied during the active growing season, or after new growth has hardened off in late spring. Also at this time, the temperature in the soil is such that the necessary microbial activity can work on the fertiliser to break it down and be taken up by the tree. By late autumn, deciduous trees have started slowing down for winter dormancy. From midsummer onwards, most of the tree's energy is shifting to root development and photosynthate production and storage to get it through winter and early spring. Late fall fertilisation may help give the tree an extra boost for spring growth, but at a certain point the tree's internal processes have slowed down and it's no longer effective.
Avoid using fertiliser on trees that have been repotted and had any serious root work done to them for about the first month after, to allow the roots to heal and avoid chemical burn.
You may well have seen some of these little plastic containers on the surface of some of my bonsai pots and be wondering what exactly they are. And in truth, all they are little plastic baskets, which are a convenient way of containing and holding fertiliser. And that can just stop the birds getting at the fertiliser and removing that from the pots. And you can get these quite inexpensively on Amazon or on eBay.
And depending on the size of the tree and pot, I may place several of these around the pot.
Now, before I tell you a shocking and surprising truth about bonsai fertilisers, I just need you to hit the like button. And if you're interested in learning how I grow my bonsai trees, then if you subscribe, you'll get notified of future videos. When you apply fertiliser, you're not actually feeding your tree. Trees feed themselves. They use the sun to provide energy for their own growth and generate sugars, proteins and other materials internally. Fertiliser is simply a supplement to help plants make their own resources more efficiently. At least 19 elements are essential to a plant. The main ones are M, P and K, and others in trace amounts. Proportionally, 99% of everything that the plant needs is already available inside the plant. Our fertiliser is supplying proportionally less than 1% of the total elements it needs. For my own bonsai fertiliser regime, I tend to use BioGold cakes.
Bio goes a little bit on the pricey side, but it's a highly regarded, solid, slow-release bonsai fertiliser. And what I tend to do is I'll pop several pellets into each pot in early May, and perhaps again in August, September time. As I water my trees, those pellets will reduce down over time. And all I do is press a couple of these fertiliser cakes into the soil around the pot, and for a pot of about this size I'll perhaps put 4 of those in around the edges of the pot. For a slightly larger tree I'll put a proportional larger amount in there. These will degrade down over time, which is why I apply a second application in about August, September time. I also then supplement that with perhaps a monthly or every other month seaweed liquid fertiliser. There's a bit of a tonic in the pot. If you want to know more about bonsai and fertilisation, there are some great resources out there. Here are a few that I recommend. Much of the information in this video was heavily influenced by this particular book, Modern Bonsai Practice by Larry Morton. And it's a great book covering lots of different aspects of bonsai and modern bonsai practice. But it has quite a good detailed section all about bonsai fertilisation, feeding, the purposes of potassium, nitrogen and phosphorus in plant development, and it's a great read if you want to know more on the subject of bonsai fertilisation. Harry Harrington's YouTube channel and website, Bonsai For Me, has some great information about fertilisation and supplements and is worth checking out. It's also worth taking a look at the YouTube channel of Peter Warren, Saruyama Bonsai. Peter has an academic background in physics and therefore is very interested in energy and energy distribution and generation within the plant. In conclusion, fertiliser is an essential element of bonsai cultivation. Bonsai trees are grown in containers, which limits their access to nutrients in the soil, making fertilisation crucial to their growth and health. There are many types of fertiliser available on the market, and it's important to choose the right one for your bonsai tree. When applying fertiliser, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully to avoid over-fertilisation, which can be harmful to the tree. By using the correct type and amount of fertiliser, you can ensure that your bonsai tree grows healthy and strong and provides you with years of beauty and enjoyment. Hello and welcome to the Bonsai Garden, and today I'd like to talk about this rather uninspiring little corner of the garden, which is in fact my growing bed where I ground grow bonsai trees to fatten up the trunks. And if you want to learn the secrets of fattening up the trunks of your bonsai trees to make them look more mature, then keep watching. I've got here a couple of bonsai trees. The first is an oak tree in a lovely little Tom Butterworth pot, and the other is this big crab apple tree. And I would like to ask you, which of those trees do you think looks the oldest? I would expect that this will be your answer, and you are correct, this is the older of the two trees, but what is it that makes you think that this is the older of the two trees? It's almost certainly the fact that there is craggy bark on this thick, gnarly trunk,
whereas this is just a seedling that's been growing for about 3 years. The reason that this has such a thick, craggy trunk is almost certainly that it spent its earlier years growing in the ground, whereas this has always lived in a pot. And as a consequence of that, this tree is almost certainly never going to look as aged and rugged as this particular tree. And that's the subject of this video.
Growing bonsai in a pot can limit growth for several reasons. Restricted root space. Bonsai pots are intentionally small to restrict the growth of the tree's root system. While this helps to control the size of the tree and maintain its miniature appearance, it also limits the root space available for the tree to grow. Restricted root space can result in a smaller, less developed root system, which can in turn limit the tree's ability to absorb nutrients and water, and ultimately restrict its overall growth and development. Limited nutrient availability. Bonsai trees grown in pots have a finite amount of soil and nutrients available to them. Over time, the nutrients in the soil can become depleted, and the limited volume of soil can make it difficult to replenish these nutrients. This can result in nutrient deficiencies, which can stunt growth and limit the overall health and vigour of the bonsai tree. This is why we fertilise our bonsais in pots. Reduced water retention. Bonsai pots are typically made with drainage holes to prevent water from stagnating in the soil and causing root rot. While this helps to prevent overwatering, it also means that the soil in the bonsai pots can dry out more quickly, especially in hot, dry climates. This can result in more frequent watering requirements, and if not managed properly, can lead to inconsistent moisture levels in the soil, which can stress the tree and limit its growth. Constrained root development. The restricted space in a bonsai pot can also cause the roots to become constrained and bound as they grow and circle within the pot. This can lead to the phenomenon known as pot bound or root bound, where the roots become compacted and fail to develop a healthy root structure. Pot-bound roots can inhibit the tree's ability to take up nutrients and water efficiently, and can also limit the tree's ability to anchor itself properly in the soil, which can negatively impact its growth and stability. Reduced environmental exposure. Bonsai pots are typically kept on display or moved around for aesthetic reasons, which can result in the tree being sheltered from natural environmental conditions. Bonsai trees, like any other plant, need exposure to sunlight, air movement, and changing weather patterns to thrive. When grown in pots, bonsai trees may not receive optimal exposure to natural environmental elements, which can affect their growth and development. This is particularly true of trees grown indoors. It's important to note that while growing bonsai in pots can limit growth, it's also a deliberate technique used in bonsai cultivation to control the size and appearance of the tree. With proper care, regular maintenance, and appropriate pot size and soil composition, it's possible to grow healthy and well-developed bonsai trees in pots. However, it's also important to recognise that growing bonsai in the ground, or using other techniques such as air layering or ground layering, can provide more favourable conditions for the tree's growth and development, allowing it to achieve larger sizes and more mature characteristics. Ground growing bonsai is a technique where bonsai trees are allowed to grow directly in the ground instead of being grown in pots or containers. This method has several benefits, especially when it comes to thickening the trunks of bonsai trees. Here are some of the key benefits. Faster growth. Ground growing allows bonsai trees to develop more quickly compared to growing them in pots. In the ground, bonsai trees have access to a larger root space, which enables them to grow more vigorously and develop thicker trunks at a faster rate. This is because they can establish more extensive root systems, access more nutrients, and absorb water more efficiently, all of which contribute to accelerated growth. Thicker trunks. Ground growing promotes thicker trunks in bonsai trees, which is a desirable characteristic in bonsai aesthetics. Thicker trunks are considered more mature and visually more appealing, and they provide a solid foundation for shaping the bonsai tree's overall design. In the ground, bonsai trees are allowed to grow freely, without the restriction of pots, which allows the trunk to thicken naturally as it develops, resulting in a more substantial and robust trunk. Improved taper. Taper, which refers to the gradual decrease in trunk thickness from the base to the apex of the bonsai tree, is an important aspect of bonsai aesthetics. Ground growing can help improve taper by allowing the tree to develop a wider base and gradually taper towards the top. This creates a more balanced and visually pleasing bonsai tree with a natural looking shape, better health and vigour. Ground growing provides bonsai trees with optimal growth conditions, including ample space for root development, access to natural sunlight and better air circulation. This results in healthier, more vigorous trees with stronger root systems, which are better equipped to withstand environmental stressors, pests and diseases. Healthy bonsai trees are more likely to develop thicker trunks and have a better chance of surviving and thriving in the longer term. In conclusion, ground growing bonsai can be a highly effective technique for thickening the trunk of a bonsai tree. It promotes faster growth, thicker trunks and improved taper, better health and vigour. However, it also requires careful management, including regular pruning and root maintenance, to ensure optimal results. If you're interested in growing bonsai, consider trying ground growing as a method to achieve thicker and more mature looking trunks in your bonsai trees.
There's perhaps a little more to this growing bed than meets the eye. Come take a look. Buried under the soil, perhaps about 5 inches down, is a paving slab. And there are 4 of them buried in a small lattice in this corner of the garden. And the idea is that the tree roots will go down through the soil, they'll absorb all the nutrients and the water that they require, but the paving slab stops those roots from descending too far down. And the aim is to give me a flatter, more radial root spread on those roots. And it also makes it easier to retrieve these trees, dig them up out of the ground when it becomes necessary to do so. And it's one of the secrets of growing the trees, getting a thicker trunk on them, but also getting a shallower root spread on those as well. I've got a number of trees planted in here, and they've been in here for 2 years now, and this will be their 3rd year. I've got a Japanese larch, behind that I've got an oak, to the side here I've got a crabapple, there's a Dishojo Japanese maple, and behind that there's a silver birch, which is beginning to thicken up quite nicely. In their 1st year in the ground, the trees will just be getting established and settling into their new home. In the 2nd year, those trees will then be beginning to put out roots and get a little bit more established. And it's only really in the 3rd year and onwards that we would expect those trees to start putting on some development and some girth. And so I'm expecting that for this coming year. So I hope you found some of that useful or interesting. If so, please hit the like button and also consider subscribing to be notified of future videos. Thanks very much, and hope to see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the bonsai garden. And one of the biggest problems I have in the garden at the moment is that I simply don't have enough bench space to put my trees. It seems like every surface in the garden is covered with pots, trees in development, seed trays, and I just need to get some more space to put the trees onto. And for a while I've had some material to make some more monkey poles for the garden, and it's now time to get around to doing that. And I'm intending on putting perhaps a couple more monkey poles just in front of the existing ones here. And to this side of the garden, the acacia tree just here is dying. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. I do believe that they do have a tendency of just dying off, but that one certainly is unhappy. So I'm also thinking of putting a couple of monkey poles in there, and that's the sunniest side of the garden, so I may well put my pine trees on there. We also have some dead space behind the bamboo fence in what we call the tea garden here, so I'm thinking of putting some kind of stand or bench along the back of this fence here, and that should certainly give me some more space for putting trees and allow me to actually sit on my garden furniture. You can see the benches are quite full, there's no space on there, and in an ideal world those trees would be spaced out so you can see each individual tree and appreciate it. Monkey poles are a traditional and classic way of displaying bonsai trees. They look a little bit like bird tables in that they've got a flat top, and they allow for the bonsai trees to be lifted up to a more appropriate viewing angle and look quite attractive in the garden. Bonsai viewing angles is an interesting subject that, whether you realise it or not, has a significant impact on the design and structure of your bonsai trees. Think, for example, about looking and viewing a forest. Typically, in order to see the structure of the forest and the grouping of the trees, you would have to be stood some distance away. The tree trunks will all look vertical and of a similar thickness. When you're viewing an individual tree, however, you're more likely to be at a lower angle looking upwards towards the crown of the tree. And because that crown of the tree is further away from you, it will seem smaller and the trunk will seem to recede and become thinner. And that's why we have this idea of taper in the trunk. And in bonsai, particularly with singular trees, we tend to create a more exaggerated taper to create a forced perspective. Sumo trees are an example where that forced perspective is taken to an extreme. The ideal viewing position for your forests then will more typically be straight on. But for individual trees, the better viewing angle to give a sense of scale and size will be at a lower angle where the canopy tends to be above your viewing position. This is where monkey poles come in, because they tend to lift the trees up to a more suitable viewing angle. There's nothing particularly clever or sophisticated about the design of my monkey poles. It's just literally a fence post upright, sank into the ground, a couple of lengths of deck board and a couple of bracer beams underneath. First of all, I'm cutting the fence poles or fence posts into appropriate lengths, and that's really determined by how high I want the monkey poles to be, and it's more of a cosmetic issue rather than anything else. So these are in now. I just need to get my spirit level out to level them off, but you get the idea. Now the mimosa tree here is likely to come out because it looks like it's dead, and I'm going to lower this monkey pole down a couple of inches so there's a stepped effect, and I just need to level those up and get my spirit level out on them, and my pine trees will live on there. I hope you found that useful or interesting. If so, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to be notified of future videos. Thanks for joining, and hope to catch you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the Bonsai Garden, and today I'd like to talk to you about how I develop a great Nebari on my bonsai trees in super quick time. So keep watching to see some great hints and tips. In bonsai, Nebari is a term that refers to the point at which the roots spread and flare at the bottom of the trunk and literally root the plant into the ground. It's a desirable quality to have in bonsai since it gives the tree an appearance of stability and age. There are a number of techniques that can be used to develop great Nebari, and I'll show you how I develop mine. One method is to plant your trees and grow them directly in the ground, and that's what I'm doing with a number of trees here. And if you're going to do that, I would recommend planting over a paving slab or a piece of slate, and the intention is that you're preventing the roots from growing downwards and escaping from you, and helping to promote a flatter, shallower, more radial root growth. Another popular method for helping promote strong, healthy root growth is to plant your tree into a pond basket, which is something like this. And this example only cost me £1.69 in my local garden centre. And the idea of these pots is that when used in bonsai, they're designed so that there's lots of aeration feeding through to the tree. So they drain well and get lots of oxygen to the roots. And these come in a variety of sizes, as you can see here, and shapes. However, when I talk about growing trees in baskets, I'm talking about something a little bit different. What I'm talking about is this. It's much larger than the typical pond basket, and it's actually a storage basket which I found in the hardware section of my local garden centre. And again, it was fairly inexpensive, but as you can see, it has, like the pond basket, it's got perforations all the way around, so on the sides and also on the bottom. And what's great about this is it's quite shallow, and so I'm getting the benefits here of growing the trees in the ground over a piece of rock or slate or a tile, and also the aeration that you would get from growing in a pond basket. And I'll show you some examples of trees that I've used this method on and the results that I'm getting. Here is an Anne Irene Japanese maple that I planted into this basket in spring of last year. The tree is actually one of a number of trees that were bought for me for my birthday, and I planted them up. This tree went into this basket. It's actually been sat on the top of another plant pot in the garden, and you can see that the roots have escaped through the bottom and started growing into the soil in the plant pot underneath. Now, although this is growing healthy roots, what you've got is quite a compact root ball, and also it's probably going to be quite a bit deeper. Now let me show you an example of one of my trees grown in one of the larger baskets. This is a little princess Japanese maple that I bought last year in spring, planted into this basket to try and promote the lateral spread of roots. And you can see that although this was a stick thin Japanese maple when I bought it, I am beginning to get a bit of a flare at the base of the trunk there. And I haven't practiced this, so I can't guarantee the results. But what I'm hoping for when I lift this out of the basket is, as you will see, there is a thick mat of roots which have spread to cover most of that basket. So in growing in one of these baskets, I'm getting the benefits of both growing in the ground, where you get a wide spreading set of roots, and lateral root growth in a quite shallow area. But also by growing in the basket, because of the perforations, what I'm getting is lots and lots of little feeder roots, which are helping to promote the growth and the rapid growth of the tree. And you can see towards the surface here, the roots are beginning to thicken up, which is precisely what we want. And that's a tree that's only been in this basket since perhaps March, April of last year. I've got here a Katsura Japanese maple, which I've had for about 3 years, and it's a tree which I bought from my local DIY store, B&Q, and I paid about £8 for this when I bought it. And when I bought it, it had a pencil thin trunk, probably about the same width as the trunk just here. And you can see that from growing it in one of the large storage baskets that I've developed quite a nice root flare on there, and the roots are beginning to spread out into the soil and give me the beginnings of a very nice Nebari. Now this tree I could plant back into the basket and let it grow for several years, and that would increase the size and vigour of the tree. However, my preference is for small shohin type trees, so I'm quite happy with the size of this tree. So the only development that I'm doing on here now is to ramify the branches and give an increased sort of twigginess to that and develop a denser canopy. Although developed for pond plants, these baskets are designed to allow for maximum root growth, whilst also allowing excess water to drain away and increased aeration. This promotes healthy root development and prevents root rot, which can be a common problem in traditional bonsai pots. By planting the tree in a shallow pond basket or these larger storage baskets, the roots are forced to grow laterally rather than straight down. This encourages the development of a strong and broad Nebari, which will provide a solid foundation for the tree as it grows. Regular watering is important when using these baskets, as excess water will drain away to prevent root rot. But with proper care, these baskets can be an excellent tool in your armoury for developing a strong Nebari on your bonsai trees. So as you can see, the use of a shallow basket has helped to develop a broad and impressive Nebari on this tree. With careful attention to watering and root development, you too can achieve beautiful and healthy bonsai trees. So why not give it a try? Incorporating shallow pond baskets into your bonsai cultivation can help with the rapid development of shallow, lateral, spreading roots and great Nebari. The results can be truly stunning. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. If so, please hit the like button and also consider subscribing to get notifications of future videos. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Stop me if you've heard this story before. You received your first bonsai tree. Perhaps it died. Perhaps it survived. Then you got a couple more. Before you knew it, you were buying, growing and placing online orders. New and exotic species. They were like Pokemon. Got to have them all. You watched and absorbed bonsai videos on YouTube. Read articles and bonsai books. And progressed your bonsai knowledge and experience. If you were brave enough, perhaps you joined the local bonsai society, or even attended shows. And met with other bonsai people. Then one day, the scales fell from your eyes. You realised you had hundreds of trees. Many low quality, some unsuited to bonsai, and a growing number of neglected trees. So, with a heavy heart, you got rid of stuff with zero potential. Focused on your prized trees, a much smaller collection of more refined bonsai. And lived a happy and fulfilled life. The end.